the Cave of Time.
I'll give you pleasure.
Welcome to the Cave of Time.
I was actually muted, but now we're good. Now we're good. We're on. We have a special guest. It's Rachel Dolezal. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, welcome, Rachel. Welcome to the Cave of Time.
Good to be here. Happy Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Doing good. Yeah.
Just hanging out with the fam, eh?
Settling into Arizona
Oh, yeah. Recently moved, eh?
this month. So.
Why did you move there?
So my middle son, Franklin, he graduated high school, which, I had a custody situation with him since the divorce with his dad in Idaho. So for 15 years, I was kind of stuck in the Spokane, Washington, North Idaho area. And once he graduated high school, I was free to move. And we came here because he's going to school at University of Arizona in Tucson for college. And with this whole COVID stuff, it's just crazy. Like there's so much is unpredictable. Like they might move into the dorms and then they might move out of the dorms and whatever. So I moved here as my first stop out of Spokane, just to be a home base for him and a support here while he's in college. And there's also, there's a lot of programs here for autism and ABA therapy. And there's even a school like K through 12 just for kids with autism diagnosis. And so my 4-year-old, it has autism spectrum disorder. And so it was just like, it seemed like everything fit for a good place for us to relocate to. So yeah, we're here. And my oldest son is actually going to come home from England in September after finishing his master's there and quarantine with us.
Does it feel like a fresh start for you?
It really does. Yeah. Yeah, it's so good to be out of Spokane, which was the epicenter for all that like frenzy over my identity and just like all the hostility really was the core of it was there and so it's good to be out of that area. Not as many people recognize me, still people do.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, you're famous, but like when I've been telling people like, oh, Rachel Dolezal is coming to podcast, like about half of them are like, who's Rachel Dolezal? So I imagine.
Oh, and also an apology because I did this too. It's actually Rachel Dolezal, right? Like that's how it's pronounced. Yeah.
Yeah, Dolezal.
Oh,
I figured that out like a week ago, but everybody says Dolezal. But yeah, sorry, Rachel Dolezal.
You know what? Like, there's actually a YouTube thing that, like, around in 2015, somebody put out a YouTube video about how to pronounce it, and it's like they're like Dolezal. Rachel Dolezal. It's kind of like I'm sure some reporters or journalists probably like watched that YouTube video literally to like the pronunciation.
Yeah. So we've got you on to talk about cancel culture, the elections, 2020. So I guess one starting point would be obviously what is cancel culture? Like what is it? What is cancel culture to you?
So I don't know if you want me to answer that. I mean, am I?
Well, we all could. We could. I've got Politico's definition up here, but I was answering you because you're here.
Why don't we start with you? You're a guest.
Michael probably. It sounds like from some of your shows he does all his homework and stuff, so he might have like the dictionary def for that.
Well, Jason, you got something up there, right?
Yeah, I mean, Politico recently did a survey, and they used the definition: the practice of withdrawing support for or canceling public figures and companies after they have done or said something considered to be objectionable or offensive.
And I would add to that just that although that's the definition online, it does happen to random people as well. It's not always a public figure. Like I never wanted to be so-called famous or infamous or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, I was just like a random person, everyday person, just trying to make a difference in my community, trying to, do some good stuff. And I think that cancel culture can happen really to anyone. If the perfect storm sort of converges and something, it's not even really a new thing, although with social media it happens like wildfire.
Yeah.
I think it's really similar to even all the way back to like witch hunts or those witch trials or any kind of a scandal. People used to like lose jobs or be kind of excommunicated from their family over a divorce or an affair, anything that was deemed as like not Christian or like bad behavior type of judgments. So definitely, certainly over sexual orientation. There are just a lot of things in the last century or so that people did get canceled. Obviously, crossing the color line in marriage. I mean, there are all kind of ways in which somebody would be disowned from a family or lose their job opportunity or whatever. But right now, with social media being so viral, literally, that anything can just get kind of copied and pasted and spread around the globe, the whole world.
And do you view yourself as being canceled, like as having been canceled?
Oh, absolutely. I still haven't been able to get a job after 5 years.
No way.
I've had to, like Malcolm X says, if they don't give you a job, you got to make your own job.
Yeah.
I've really made my own job. It's taken a lot of hard work, but like with my art and braiding hair, and it's just, slogging it through.
You're a fantastic artist, by the way. I mean, I'm sure if people saw the Netflix special, they would be aware of that. But yeah, I'd recommend people check that out. It's on like your Instagram page, which we've linked in the description.
Yeah, so I originally reached out to Rachel about her art, and I think we're gonna get something done together, hopefully later, because fantastic art.
What do you mean something done? You haven't told me that. Like, are you commissioning a piece?
I'm gonna commission a piece.
Oh, no way! Wow, breaking the news. Okay.
Yeah. So
wait. On that, what are you gonna get done?
Well, I think I'm gonna get a picture of my son done.
Oh yeah.
You know what? After that's done, I'll probably get something done for the podcast too.
All right.
So I can put it in the bar.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. But if I like it, if the goods are good.
You get half up front, half after. If I like
did you always do art and hair while you were, I guess, when you had a real job, when you had like a 9 to 5 kind of thing?
So my real job was actually at Eastern Washington University. So I taught in the Africana Studies department, race and culture studies. I actually taught 15 college courses, written curriculum, and taught 15 different courses.
15 a year?
Not all at the same time, but 15 different courses. So that's a lot of curriculum to keep in your brain. And from African art history all the way to just like race and culture studies 101 or research methods in race and culture studies, African history, African American culture, Black women in hair. I mean, there are a lot of different courses that I taught at Eastern. So
how long did you do that for?
That was my like about 10 years.
My goodness.
Yeah. So like when Whoopi Goldberg said 5 years, I was like,
yeah.
It was 10. But anyway, yeah, so that was my regular job. Now my two unpaid positions were, of course, the president of NAACP and the chair of the police ombudsman. Those are both unpaid. And then I worked also for a paper, The Inlander. I wrote kind of as a cultural commentator, and that was not really. I mean, it was like $25 a week. So like, is that really pay? I mean, it's like $25 an article. That was like crazy.
It's not really. It's not really a job.
It was really just like you're getting a little dribble, like a tip for having the right to have a voice in the community, kind of a thing. So those were my positions. All four of those. I lost those during the whole craziness of June of 2015, and yes, during that time I did braid hair. Like I had my friends and my kind of like my favorite hair clients, about 8 to 10 of them that I kept when I had jobs, when I was like super busy, and I was like, okay, but I'll do your hair. And then once I lost all those positions, I built my clientele up to about 40 clients in Spokane, but Spokane is like 2% Black. So basically I just kind of like expanded my hair client repertoire. And the same with art. I always am creating, but the time allotment for that like became bigger. I just put more emphasis on it, focused on it a lot more. Built my website.
Are you getting a lot of attention now that you're on Netflix and stuff about your art?
Netflix did help kind of show people that I'm an artist. I would say that the majority of people who really connect with me in that documentary and want to buy my art are not typical art collectors. So I would kind of say right now, like I'm a working artist. I have a Master of Fine Arts degree from Howard University. And so my actual degree is in studio art, which a lot of people didn't know before because I was more known for my activism and teaching.
Yeah.
But there's a long history of doing shows, and I've won national awards and things for my art. So but that had kind of faded a little bit into the background with the advocacy work being more in the foreground in that North Idaho, Eastern Washington area where it was so, conservative, so many hate groups there and whatever, that I felt like, my work needed to be more activism and advocacy. So yeah, so it's kind of like come more into the foreground in my life, and but it's always been there. I mean, I've been doing art since I was like 4, and
why don't you fill our audience in about the Netflix special? Because we were under the impression that you got paid a lot of money for it. We said we were on the podcast about you. We were saying things like, "Well, she can't be doing that bad. Like she's got a Netflix special."
Yeah, I apologize for that. I totally thought that you would have made a lot of money off that, but I've since been informed that you made $0.
Yeah, well, see, and a lot of people do reach out to me too, like, "Hey, can you give me your contact at Netflix because I want to do a film?"
Yeah.
No, you have it all wrong. I don't have a contact at Netflix. I didn't make the film. I didn't have enough money to create a film, in general, that would be, seen by anybody. I mean, I'm not a film director. So what happened in 2015, as everything was exploding, I ended up having a lot of people coming at me with different ideas, like feature film, reality TV show, porn, was there too. Like there's so those
really?
were the paid options.
Who offered you a porn job?
And of course, like I wanted to write my book, and those were kind of the more serious projects that I felt were would kind of correct the narrative and clear up a lot of the misperceptions that were swirling around about my story, who I am, what my intentions are, what I really believe about race, culture. So I did this serious stuff, even though it was was the stuff that was the harder path, unpaid path.
Okay, so they came to you with a Netflix documentary. They offered you no money, and then I guess they didn't know it was going to get picked up by Netflix. They pitched it to them afterwards.
No. So the director of the film, when she first approached me, she actually knew my direct supervisor with the NAACP. So the Alaska, Oregon, Washington president, who totally supported me through everything, as well as the national president of NAACP, who also supported me through everything. They were like, yeah, she's a really good film director, and she did this film called Lemon, and that was but it was kind of more like an indie documentary. So I thought, oh, this will be something. It'll be cool. It'll be honest. It'll be objective. It'll be a third-party lens. So I know we're kind of letting go of control a little bit because I don't get to control the film, but that's the process. That's the honest process of a documentary, especially when there aren't like a bunch of talking heads or whatever. You're just letting these people into your life. Now, what a lot of people don't know is they actually filmed for 2 years in our house.
Oh, wow.
So long.
They
Yeah.
didn't give you anything. Like they didn't have craft services. They didn't have anything for you guys.
Right? Like
wow.
we didn't. No. So that was. We thought it would be like a couple months maybe to like tell our story and get it all out there. And my sister wanted to be in the film. My kids were in. Like we all agreed we're gonna do this project. But then, as you saw toward the end of the film, Franklin, in that one scene, he was actually not mad at me. He was actually just tired of being filmed. So he had a bad day at school, came home, and there are cameras in his face, and he was just like, "I'm done with this. Like, why can't we just go back to like May of 2015? I'm so over this because it's just been a long 2 years of explain this and how do you feel about that?" And he was like, "Can we just not?" So we were all pretty exhausted. I mean, I went to South Africa for 17 days to speak. They filmed there, didn't even show that. There are hundreds of hours of footage that never saw the light of day.
Oh yeah.
Because for 2 years you're filming and then you have a 90-minute film.
Yeah.
So there was so much that was cut out, so much support. There are 12 Black voices in Spokane that went on camera in support of me. They cut all those. They just show like the two women who were anti-Rachel.
So were
Um,
you unhappy with the finished product?
well, I'm actually happy with the response to the product, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
When we first saw it, it was already cut. We didn't have any say over any edits or anything. We did see it right before it premiered, so we had at least we had we got to see it before the whole world saw it. But yeah, we were kind of a little bit unhappy with certain parts. You know how, like, when I was asked a question, I gave a very thoughtful answer, and they would just cut to me just sitting there like I didn't have anything to say.
Oh yeah, I hate
And
it when the media does
I
that.
think
Yeah.
it's because my answers were more academic, and the director really was more interested in doing like a heartstrings documentary. And it was, so she just
Yeah.
that's how it was shaped.
Yeah.
And I think most of all, Franklin was pissed because of that one scene that, after he filmed that last interview, he was kind of like, okay, I was just upset today. Can we just cut that? Like, I don't really want that. Like, I said some things I didn't mean. And he was over it in 2 hours. And the director was
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I'll cut it. Like, no problem. And they not only kept it, but they actually, that was the trailer for the whole film. So he was so like, he
Yeah.
had a lot of people being like on his case about, why don't you support your mom? And he's like, I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
And
and
he's not in the social limelight either. He's just some kid, right?
yeah, like, I mean, he is now in a sense. Like, there are people who reach out. I mean, there are so many people who reached out to my kids, like, tell your mom to kill herself and do the world a favor, and
Wow.
da 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 da. Like, she, like, telling them a bunch of stuff. Like, even going after like Isaiah, they're like, you're a whole sellout. You're not even Black. And then like to Franklin, like, good job for cutting your mom down. And so like they were in the midst of, that was a lot of the reaction of the film. And so they're like, Isaiah's like, no, I'm not a sellout just because I stand by her as my mom. She's my real mom, even though she's not my biological mom, and I shouldn't have had to explain that to the world, but here we are. And so, yeah, Franklin had the opportunity of going on the Today Show actually to kind of say his piece, and it was before the film actually dropped on Netflix, and so it was after that trailer came out. But the director and Netflix were like, no, don't do that. Like, we'll give you an op-ed in Teen Vogue. Like, we'll set that up. You'll have a voice. You'll be able to clear it up. And, just don't do that. Let the film premiere. Let it breathe. Well, they never gave him his voice. I actually, the op-ed he wrote for Teen Vogue, I actually have on my YouTube channel. I just like read it because it's like nobody ever saw it. So,
Yeah.
he never had his voice. So there are some things like that, that kind of rub a little bit like, gee, that sucks. But at the same time, like I said, I'm happy with the majority of people's response to the film. Like people never knew I was an artist. There was a little bit of information about the family backstory, which helped. My sister's case was done justice, I think, in the film, which a lot of people didn't know about her case, and that being the reason why these parents like went on TV to discredit me. So there were some things that I think, was just like information that mattered to people that had been censored out of the mainstream media that made it in. So, it's just like a compromise system. Like, we live with the pros and the cons, like it is what it is. It's not our film. Like, I'm okay with it. It's out there. It's one perspective. The only place I feel like I have really had my voice heard uncensored is my book, but a lot of people don't read. So,
oh my God, there's so much. Okay, there's so much I want to jump on there. First of all, a great answer. Thank you. Second of all, who offered you a deal to do pornography?
Vivid Entertainment.
Vivid Entertainment. Yeah, I'm not familiar with them, but they
wanted, there's like 6 figures for 4 positions, and they wanted to put it on wefuckblackgirls.com.
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah, not a chance. I have sons. No, thank you.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's gotta be like rolling around in your brain for at least a second when you've got no job and nothing to do. Like, no, never. I mean, good for you.
Like there are just certain things that I just will not do because I'm a rape survivor and also experienced molestation as a child. There are just certain things that like are not an option for me. I'm not saying that that's the same process for everyone, but I think that some people compartmentalize, and for me, it's just like
Not an
sex
option
has to be about love, and so I can't just like I just can't do porn. Like I
Yeah.
just can't. Like I would like a part of me would die, and I'm not willing to kill that spirit in order to make 6 figures, and then that money gets spent, and then you're back to square one.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
You
like
know?
you're having trouble getting a job now. Imagine also having that behind you.
Well, yeah, it's out of my character, and I was really also on a mission to show people that I do have integrity, and that my character was
Yeah.
not correctly represented, and so I felt like even if we have to just slog it out and what it takes to build our life back, like it is what it is. Like we're just gonna have to.
And then how about your book? Like, do you own the book? Did you get a ghostwriter to help you, or is that all you? What happened with the book?
Yeah, so the book, I actually shopped my book for an entire year. I couldn't get any publisher to publish it. And after a year, I finally I circled back to this book agent that contacted me early on. And I thought he was kind of a prick, honestly. I was like, this guy, like, no, I don't want to work with him because he like works with like the Octomom and all these like people who have like all these bad things. I'm like, I'm not that person. I'm a respected professor, an award-winning leader in the community. It's like, and I just kind of had to say, like, look, this is what the world, this is the situation. Like, if he's the fixer, like if he's the one who can get you any deal, I just did not want to be self-published because I wanted my book to be fact-checked and go through the whole process, just like the film. Like I did because everybody was calling me a liar and a con and a fraud. So I wanted to submit myself to the accountability process of a reputable publisher. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah. And,
Sorry about the background
that's
noise.
okay. That's okay.
Hyped up.
I'm a big offender for background noise on the podcast because I got a big family.
He's got a swing set that really needs oiling.
Yeah, I oiled it last week actually, so that's why you can't hear it right now. But okay, so do you have you? Go ahead.
So actually, I was gonna finish. So with the book, you asked if there's a ghostwriter. So by the time I found an actual publisher, they kind of felt like we have to get this out ASAP because the story is already a year old. So if we're gonna publish this, you have like 4 months to wrap everything. And so Storm's Reebok was not really a ghostwriter. He's named in the book. You don't usually name like a ghostwriter, but so we worked together. So how that happened was basically like I would draft a chapter, send it to him. I would also put together like, this is the next sequence of events. How do we structure this? Where do we start? Do we start with me being born? I mean, so he's a New York Times best-selling author, so he kind of, I trusted his process, like he might know better than me as far as a memoir, how to structure it. And sometimes you don't start with, November 12th, 1977, I was born. Sometimes you start with an anecdote later in your life, and then you move into your birth. And so with mine, he's like, no, we should start with the crazy, you're born at a teepee on the side of a mountain with Jesus Christ on your birth certificate as the doctor. Like, that's like kind of weird and kind of like, we should start there.
Yeah. So he's more like an editor or like a director for the book.
Yeah, and I would say co-writer in a sense, because like he drafted some stuff, like I was drafted. We were just basically like working on the project together and sending stuff back and forth. And so, but it's definitely my book. I felt like the parts of your book I read was more your voice than the Netflix movie. Is that correct? Yeah, for sure. My entire book is much more my voice. Because like I said, most of the parts where I actually say something in the Netflix documentary or have the opportunity to say something, they cut it, and then a lot of people reach out like, oh, I just want to help you have the words to say what you need to say, and I'm like, so frustrating. Like, no, I did say something that was very thoughtful. Just cut it out, But that's the film process. Like I said, I have peace with it. It's fine. And if people really want to know, they can read my book. And if they really don't have the attention span for that,
They can buy the
moving
audiobook.
on.
Do you have an audiobook on that?
Well, the problem is the book didn't actually sell enough copies for the publisher for like any audio publisher to take it. So like there hasn't, I read a couple chapters on my YouTube channel. Just
that's what I read. That's what I heard. I was researching.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, but there's a lot more in the book.
I have a question. Do you know who Nuka Zeus is?
Well, I do, just only because I actually watched your episode about transracialism.
Yeah, well, Nuka Zeus is a friend of the show. He's in the chat right now, and he asked me to ask you, with all the offers she got, does she regret any that she turned down, and what would she do different if she could go back?
First of all, like I really have no regrets. I mean, I know people want me to have regrets or expect that I might, but no, I wouldn't have taken anything, because even with a reality TV show or something like that, yeah, you get a paycheck, but again, they can edit that so heavily to make it look any kind of way they want to make it look. And so yeah, I really am about the truth. I'm a Scorpio. Scorpios are truth tellers, even though I have a reputation for not being that. I really am. I'm constantly trying to like get back to clarity of who I am and what my intentions are in the world, and move back toward my activism and fighting for racial social justice and teaching, hopefully again someday. And meanwhile, of course, doing my art and hair and stuff like that. So
just to tie things back to cancel culture, you were saying that you got canceled. This is a phenomena that's increasing in popularity right now. Do you see a problem with cancel culture? What is your appraisal of it as a phenomenon?
So I think cancel culture is a tool like that can be used for just cause or unjust cause. I mean, I think that just similar to boycotts and sit-ins and things like that, when it's levied toward businesses or corporations to hold them accountable, like say for example, even just organizations at large, like Michael B. Jordan's doing this thing about like changing Hollywood. People could boycott Hollywood and say like we're not going to watch any films until Black actors get equal pay for equal work or something like that. So cancel culture can work when it's kind of the target is a corporation or maybe even a public figure who, like a politician who's stepping outside of their purpose and their cause and what they got elected to do.
So then
I think that when it comes to an individual person just living their life, it's not fair to have the public in a mob sense be like judge and jury simultaneously and sentence you, to like shut her out of every job, and if you ever give her a job, we're gonna cut. There were 13 engagements that I had offered to me over the last 5 years at universities, because actually there are a lot of there are even courses on Rachel Dolezal. There are college courses talking about transracial identity, talking about Rachel Dolezal, talking about trans like gender and race identity. And these are things that are explored in an academic arena that I think really should see the light of day and should be able to be discussed without censorship. And so I've been invited to campuses, but 13 out of 13 of those speaking engagements have been canceled because as soon as it's announced that I'm coming to campus, there's immediate opposition and people boycott the event.
Really?
And demand that, like if I don't, same thing in San Antonio. San Antonio is scheduled to speak at the Dream event, Martin Luther King Dream Week, it's called. And I was going to speak about what it means to be human. And that was the theme for the 2019 Martin Luther King Dream Week. And so anyway, but there are about 8 people, just 8 really loud people who opposed that and went on all kinds of social media and just demanded like we need to put pressure on any sponsors of Dream Week for all that. They had 270 events.
And
That was just one little slip out of 270 events, but people were threatening to like cancel sponsorships and withdraw funding. And so at that point,
but what was the rationale for that? Like why like what was their argument to make to the organizers and to the to the sponsors? Like what did they?
To us.
That's it. She's just offensive to us.
Like she's that white woman that pretended to be black. Period.
Wow.
And we don't like her. We want her to go
away. Well, so
taking up space.
You share a common problem that I feel a lot of conservatives are complaining about right now, that they can't get access to speak on campus. And I mean, I know there's people in our audience who are going to kind of say like, you kind of deserve it because you're on the left wing and you would probably want certain people to be canceled for their points of view. What do you think about an argument like that against you?
So I think, like I said, college campuses, university environment is the place for it's the world of thought, it's the world of ideas, and I think that there should not be any topic that's off limits. But I do think that certainly there should never be like malicious harassment allowed. Like so when it comes to hate speech and not just being conservative or liberal, but in terms of in North Idaho, for example, as the director of the Human Rights Education Institute there, and that institute existed only because the international headquarters of the Aryan Nations was bankrupted and shut down in that area. And basically, there was a law that we got passed that for malicious harassment is like hate speech. So if somebody says the N-word, like you can get up to like 5 years in like locked up for 5 years and $1,000 to $5,000 fine
for saying the N-word.
Malicious harassment. So basically, like for example, in Hayden, Idaho, there's in Hayden, Idaho is the actual place that the Aryan Nations had their compound. So there's this black dude from Spokane, Washington, that was in the bar there in Hayden, Idaho, and he was, like his back was turned, and there's this white guy that comes up and says like, you blah blah blah, racial slur epithet in there, shouldn't be in this bar, like you don't belong here. And the guy turned around, and what the white dude didn't see that the black dude had on his shirt says Spokane Boxing League. So like the black dude turned around and knocked him out with one punch, right? So the black dude did not have any consequences. Like you think, oh, he was the one that assaulted the guy, because in K-12 school, like the kid that punched the kid would be the one that would get in trouble. But actually in Idaho, because of that law, the racial slur was actually the first punch, because it was malicious harassment. It was not free speech.
Does that work in every direction? Like if somebody walked up to me and said like, hey, cracker, or something like that, and I punched them, would that work in that way?
No, it works. It works in terms of, like the historically oppressed and historically oppressive groups. I think you have to differentiate between also like racism and prejudice. Everyone's prejudiced, but racism is by definition white supremacy as a worldview. And so, you can be prejudiced, but you can't be like reverse racist, because it doesn't carry with it that 500 years of history.
So like the definition of racism that you're talking about is prejudice plus power, right?
Yeah. Like racism, even the separation of the human race, the human race doesn't meet the zoological requirements for separate races, because we are all more similar than we are different as far as physiologically. So the idea of separate races is birthed out of a colonial mindset by Europeans in order to oppress. So it was like the idea of white supremacy in the scramble for Africa, take over and own not only land but people. That whole idea came out of a racist view. So you could say that racism created the idea of race, in a sense.
Yeah, but so you would justify, so like I'm just trying to get a good view of your point. Like you would justify cancel culture against someone who's being like over racist, or perhaps dangerous political views, say far right, neo-Nazi, alt-right, something like that? Think it would
You
be
know,
okay to
I don't.
cancel those
So,
voices?
so I don't think that necessarily there should be like, oh, if you're a liberal, you shouldn't get canceled. If you're conservative, you should. I'm
Yeah,
not trying to say that. Like,
yeah.
so I don't know if you're familiar with doxing, right?
Doxing, yeah, yeah, we're totally against doxing on the show.
Yeah. So there was a situation where this this kid, this teenager, said something like posted in the comments, just posted a comment on Instagram, and like through doxing, basically his parents both lost their jobs, and I think
Hmm.
that's not cool because
That's
like he was like
ridiculous.
15,
Yeah.
and teenagers do that kind of stuff. Like he said, like guacamole, n-word, penis, or something. It was like I guess it was like a thing that the kids were saying. Like posting in the comments just to like be little jerks.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
anyway, so his parents weren't even aware that was even a thing, or that he even had said that, or that like he was just trying to be cool, get clout. I don't really think that in
What
that case, even
about
though I don't believe in the N word, right? Because as a former NAACP president, chapter president, the NAACP actually had like a whole funeral for that word, and like nobody should ever say it, blah blah blah. So because of the history there, so yeah, I wouldn't endorse what that kid did, but I also can separate and say like I still don't think his parents should have lost their jobs. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
what
like let's
about
be fair.
yeah, no, I think I get where you're coming from. I think, I mean, Jason, you probably will agree with me. I think like we go even further. Like I don't think anybody should lose their job for saying the N-word necessarily, do you?
Well, I think that definitely there should be some kind of a like a social pressure to not be like there should be an intentional anti-racist effort. Like that shouldn't be socially acceptable.
But that would be an economic
So
pressure if
you
you're
shouldn't
losing
just
your
be like
job.
giving people a green light to say that, because it is part of malicious harassment. That is hate
Yeah.
speech.
Well, I mean,
So
I understand when
that's
when
the
you
line for me between like free speech and malicious harassment. I think we need to separate there.
okay, okay. I think all right, I think she explained that pretty well. Jason, what do you think?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, all right. I'm not sure we agree, but I think that's a good explanation. And yeah. What about somebody like Brett Kavanaugh? So Brett Kavanaugh, I assume you're not a big fan?
As a sexual assault survivor, yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't be a big fan.
Okay,
And
so
I would
Brett
tend,
Kavanaugh, let's say Brett Kavanaugh, he sexually harassed somebody or sexually assaulted somebody when he was 17, and now he's trying to get this big position as a judge, as a Supreme Court justice, and everyone's trying to take him down. Like, do you think there is something there? Because I would say something like, if you're going to punish him, the time to punish him was, when he was 17, 18. There's no,
right.
he's a different person now. He's not who he was when he was 17, right? But what do you think about that?
Well, he might be or he might not be a different person.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's up to him to prove. Like, I think that what the kind of move of integrity would have been for Brett would be to say like, I really, I'm sorry for this, to kind of come clean about it instead of just denying it, to own it and explain like how he's evolved and grown if he has. And for when people are in denial, that a perpetrator or a former perpetrator, like that tends to kind of signal that there's still that same person. They still objectify women, or they still, feel like women shouldn't have a voice, or there should never be any consequences for them because they're above the situation as a white male, or as a male in general. Like, I don't have to answer for that.
So
So again, I think we need to figure out like how do we hold people accountable without just green lighting or red lighting, like you're 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 done, or you have like just a green light to do anything. Um there needs to be like a degree of accountability for everything, I think. And so I think with that, for sure, he should have had to answer for it. And I feel like he kind of got off easy, honestly. with that. Like, I mean, he's a Supreme Court justice, so
Yeah, no.
for example, for me, like, okay, everybody like complained about it, but then a lot of people just made the woman out to be the liar, which is standard fare. If you're a woman, Hillary Clinton was a liar. Every woman is like a liar about something. Is like the tendency of the media and society. So I feel like, it's kind of like the gravity goes towards believing the guy.
Well, do you not think there's any chance that he didn't commit the assault?
I, as a sexual assault survivor, and I can't say that I'm not biased. I'm biased toward believing the victim in pretty much any situation, except if it's like really been proved they didn't even meet this person and there's like no chance. But yeah, like from his era, that was kind of almost not standard fare, but like not uncommon for guys to take advantage of girls
Well,
back
if
then.
if it was the norm back then, don't you think there's kind of wiggle room for forgiveness because we used to act a certain way and now we've changed as a society and don't act that way anymore? I mean, who was around when Brett Kavanaugh was 17 years old to tell him, "Hey, man, that behavior's not cool"? We didn't have the
Yeah.
whole Me Too movement, and we didn't have a lot of social
Mhm.
pressures. So, what do you
Right.
think of that?
Like we need to have some kind of a mediation between past and present, but I still think that right is right and wrong is wrong. And whether somebody was in blackface and that just gets exposed now from their past yearbook, 40 years ago, or whatever, like the Trudeau, I think,
Yeah.
Yeah,
had that, but he seems to kind of like face the situation and apologize and say like, look,
yeah,
I was wrong. I didn't realize that that was offensive at the time, or I didn't mean it in that way. But I would never do that again. And I didn't really hear that coming from Brett Kavanaugh. So I think, again, we have to take each situation for what it is and not necessarily assume that a person has evolved and grown, but also not assume that they haven't.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Uh, yeah, I think there's some common ground in that. Maybe
Yeah.
a good example was if somebody went to prison for a terrible crime, rape, murder, something like that. I imagine you would assume that after they've served their sentence, it's possible for them to change, become a good member of society, a productive member of society, and society should welcome them back.
Yeah, but that person, if it was for rape, for example, they still have to like enter the sex offender registry wherever they live. So there's still like it's like a modified, like there's a second chance, but there's still some accountability. Like we want to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and people also need to know, like that this has happened. If they have kids and they live nearby, like people should have the right to know. I mean, that's not the case with some of these other non-sexual offenses, but because people can get out. I actually um, helped push through the Ban the Box initiative in Spokane, for city jobs, like to ban the box for felons, because if the work that they're doing for that job is unrelated, they're not going to be around anybody under 18 and whatever, like they shouldn't have to basically eliminate themselves from a job opportunity because of a decision that they made, or even in some cases, of course, we know that people are falsely accused and do time, and get out, and they actually get exonerated later or get exonerated in the midst of their sentence and then get let out. Actually, my supervisor, the president of the Alaska, Oregon, Washington NAACP, is the first person to be exonerated from death row in Washington state after 23 years of being locked up. Angela Davis and others helped, kind of adjudicate his case and get him freed from death row in Washington state. So there are definitely people who are innocent. I think with cancel culture, though, this phenomenon really isn't innocent until proven guilty. It's like guilty until proven innocent.
So
And by the time you have the chance to prove yourself innocent, everybody's attention has moved elsewhere. So that guilty stigma pretty much just like lodges permanently as that's who that person is. And forever will be.
What do you think of Joe Biden's comments, not wanting an area turned into a racial jungle? You know, you heard that whole row of his past experience in politics. Do you think that he's exonerated of that now?
I'm sorry, you kind of faded out a little bit there.
Oh, I'm
Like,
sorry.
or
Joe
like
Biden's comments
kinda
on
supporting a segregationist or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
Is
that
that
too.
one?
And then he also had comments about how he didn't want a certain area to turn into a racial jungle by submitting to certain policies.
Yeah, so I think a lot of Biden's comments have been, like they call them gaffes. I guess that's like a nice way of saying he puts his foot in his mouth a lot. Kind of sucks that he's the Democratic nominee,
Yeah, so you're
but
not
he
a fan,
is.
yeah.
So he's like better than Trump, in my opinion. But at the same
Yeah.
time, like I'm not going to. I mean, when they ask in one of the debates, they ask him about education, like what should we do about education disparities between black students and white students, and he started talking about playing like soul music at night before kids went to bed.
On the I think on the record player too. I think he
On the
wanted them to
record
play it on the
Right,
record
on a
player.
record
Yeah,
player.
Yeah.
I was
yeah,
just like, what?
yeah.
Like what is this guy smoking today? Like I don't know. Like some people say he has maybe some memory issues, and
Yeah.
other people talk about his speech impediment when he was younger and whatever. But honestly, he's an old white guy, and I feel like some of it is just him
Are you voting for him?
coming through. Like from his time. I don't feel like he's the best candidate, the most relevant candidate for this exact time right now in 2020 to lead the country. However, neither is Trump, in my opinion. And so they're both kind of like, the lesser of two evils, sort of.
So what you're
It's
saying
like
is,
Kanye.
what you're saying is Sean King for president.
No.
Who did you support in the
Sean
primaries?
King has thrown me under the bus times for me to really unilaterally support anything he has to say. I'm not going to throw him under the bus, but we're not friends.
We
We're not
do you know him? Do you know Sean King? Have you ever spoken with him?
No, I just heard him do interviews about how terrible I am, and it's like, come on, dude. Like, because immediately in 2015 he started going like, I'm not Rachel. Like, good thing I'm not Rachel. And then like in 2016, a year later, and then his white brother came out of the woodwork to basically try and do the same thing. Like, hey, he's white, and then everybody's like, yeah, but it's cool, it's cool. And so one of my friends, interestingly enough, in 2015 was like, this would never, and he's a guy, but he was like, this would never happen to a man in the same way it's happened to you. And I was like, yeah, I guess it wouldn't, because it did. And he won a BET award. He's still like got, all his money, all his jobs.
So Jason brought this up on our transracialism podcast. He basically said something along the lines of, where are all the feminists? Because you caught hell when you got outed. And Sean King is bigger than ever.
But like black women love Sean King for some reason.
Do they? I didn't know that.
But
I didn't know that either.
There's a thing about not all black women, but there there have been a lot of black women that came to his support, and so that ended up kind of drowning out some of the opposition online. And there's just a thing about like light skin, green-eyed black girls. Like there's a lot of haterade toward like the lights, like the lighter version. I have green eyes, and I've gotten hate whether I'm racialized as black or whether people racialize me as white. It's like people are like, we don't like her because she's got that kind of a look, and that's been, I don't know, like that's been kind of a sexualized thing, but it's also been attached to colorism. And I think that a lot of the conversation in 2015 was actually not really about race. It was more about colorism within the black community, because a lot of people saying like, she's not black, well, the day before that, people were like, oh, I have black people in my family that are lighter than you are. And like, I have black people that have green eyes, and I have, like everybody knows somebody who's passed as white, or who is super light skin. Like families have this range of melanin because of the history in the United States. And so when people say like, all my ancestors were slaves and all your ancestors were slave owners. It's like, yeah, my ancestors came from like the Czech Republic as potato farmers and stuff like after slavery ended in America. But like people aren't thinking that actually a lot of Black people in America have the slave owners in their ancestry too. So it's not really as black and white. I think a lot of it has to do with the the field versus the house, the colorist idea with women, like the skin bleaching, the blonde weaves, the whatever, So I think that a lot of that has this psychological undertone, and women love to tear other women down. And when it comes to dark skin versus light skin, that's a real thing. So with Sean King though, it's like he's kind of like the little knight in shining armor to be like Black women are beautiful, and like the darker the berry, the sweeter the juice and stuff. And so he kind of makes Black women feel good in a way, and he can kind of promote his Black wife as like she's by my side, and but yeah, it's kind of interesting how he does all these fundraisers for victims of his brutality, and in some cases, I mean, I've heard, and again, this is say so, I don't know, but like some of that money, doesn't go to the families, and he's had like 9 vacations and all this stuff. Like he's set, like he's been living large, and so I don't really have any.
You think he's
dude, but
do you think he's transracial? Do you
That's
think
what I
he's
was
a
gonna ask,
transracial
yeah.
person?
I mean, I don't know. I'm not transracial. Like
You're not transracial.
Be like, I would identify as Black, or I would identify as trans Black if somebody feels like that's more honest. But
yeah,
when it comes to transracial, that's like saying transhuman. Like, because I don't believe in race as, I believe in the human race. So racially identify as human, culturally identify as Black. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you want to like break that down, but so the reason why the word transracial started trending is because Caitlyn Jenner came out the same month and year, June of 2015, that that my story surfaced. So it was like, oh, Caitlyn Jenner's transgender, and then, or Bruce Jenner's, now Caitlyn, and then it was like, oh, and Rachel Dolezal, so that must be transracial.
Yeah.
And then of course it helped that my name's Rachel. So people were making like these shirts like trans Rachel. Whatever. You got thrown some humor with it. But I never actually started that term or used that word to identify myself.
Very similar to what Nuka Zeus says. He says the exact same kind of things.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of
I feel that mirrors transgender people. They say, well, I'm a trans woman because it makes it easier for you to understand.
Gender is a social
really
construct. Yeah.
Yeah.
But see, that's the thing. Like, I'm a woman, period. It's like kind of how some people feel. But then other people say, no, I'm transgender, and I want people to know my past and my present and all, the whole transition and everything. And so I think that people really should be allowed to speak for themselves and be self-determined and say like, hey, I believe in the race worldview and I am transracial. Okay, well, let's, like hear what you have to say. And somebody that says, I don't believe in the race worldview, and I'm not white. I identify as Black, and this is how, culturally, philosophically, whatever, and break it down. And I think we should be able to hear people through that, and not say, no, but you're transgender. You're not a woman. You're trans woman. You know what I mean? Like, that's like, who are you to tell somebody who they are? Like,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. Like because
I don't.
The label that somebody expresses is actually a statement about their belief system. So if you know what I mean, like,
Do you think so? So do you think Black people have different beliefs than white people just because of being Black?
I think there's a lot of different spectrum within being Black. I mean, like, we're all technically members of the Black human race. If you really want to be technical, we all go back to Black Mother in Africa. And so, that's like the one thing that people actually all could claim, but it's been so oppressed and judged as being, inferior and less than. And so then there's this kind of also this upsurge of reclaiming that identity out of oppression. And so there's so many different angles to it that I think once again we need to listen to what the individual says, and that will tell us where they're coming to the table, their perspective, what they're bringing to the table with how they view the world and how they view themselves in the world, and whether they're connecting with their more recent ancestors or their more distant ancestors or none of their ancestors.
If you look at Sean King, like, I think it's pretty obvious he exists in a Black community. He's a member of a Black community, right? He identifies as Black. He's got a Black family. He's working for Black issues. But I get the feeling that he's terrified of getting canceled because he blocks anybody who talks about it instantly on every single platform. Like I think he kind of saw you as a canary in the coal mine and was like, oh fuck, like I better double down on this super hard and make sure this shit doesn't happen to me.
Right. Yeah, no, I think he did. And then it kind of freaked him out that it did happen, but then he made it kind of go away real quick. Or other people helped
maybe
him.
In liberal circles, but like pretty much every conservative person I know says that he's a white guy, just basically a con artist.
Yeah, well, but see, people will throw him and Elizabeth Warren and I all into like the same, like Sean King and Rachel Dolezal and Elizabeth Warren. And it's like we're not all the same person, and I think we all have different lifestyles, presumably, totally. And so yeah, that's not cool. I don't feel like it's cool to be lumped in. I don't have any ill will toward Elizabeth Warren, but I think her story is different than my story. And
well, if you want to talk about like privilege plus power, like Elizabeth Warren's up here, Sean King's like not quite up here, but he's got a lot of power, a lot of privilege, and then I guess you're further down the totem pole.
For class, yeah, but I feel rich in other ways because I feel like I have made a lot of difference in people's lives, and I have, beautiful kids, and I don't think of myself as like less than either one of them. I just feel like I have less money, I have less likability.
Well, you certainly have less of a platform and less of a voice.
Yeah, for sure.
Less power.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I think too, like there was something kind of funny. I don't always like to read the comments, but there was this one comment that somebody was like, "Well, at least Rachel looked mixed, and like she looks believable, but Sean King just got a Caesar cut, called it a day."
Kind of true though. Where's the lie? Where's the lie?
Haircut that he has is called a Caesar cut.
Yeah. Yeah, we covered that in our podcast. We did a photo of him with like white people hair and a photo of him as he is, and I don't know, man. I don't know.
That's kind of cringy because I don't like some of that stuff being done to me. Like when people usually juxtapose me at like age 12, like, oh, this is her, and then this is her, and I'm like, who doesn't look different than when they were 12? I mean, come on, people.
That's true.
But yeah.
Well, I don't think like we certainly don't care what race you are or what race you want to be or what race people think you are. I mean, like we would want to judge you based on your ideas and what you have to offer. And I like the thing I was saying on the podcast about you, I was like, you know what? She seemed like she would be a good neighbor. Like she seemed like she would be a cool person to live next to. I bet she would send muffins over. Like I bet she would do my kid's hair. Like,
and she's drinking Coke Zero instead of Diet Coke, which is a very rare choice. They marketed Coke.
The can is blacker. No.
Nice. They marketed that towards men though, because men were not so keen to buy Diet Coke, and that was the birth of Coke Zero.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Bill Gates drinks like Diet Coke and Coke Zero.
So do I. So do I. Well, some people are comfortable in their masculinity enough to drink Diet Coke.
Yeah.
No, I actually have like that whole quarantine 15 thing going on. Like I need to lose some weight.
Oh yeah.
I've got that like.
Yeah, mine's more like.
But I wouldn't be bringing over muffins. I'd be bringing over like some sweet potato pie or something.
Nice. Keto snacks. Paleo.
Yeah.
I really wanted. I'd be remiss not to get these answers from you. Who did you support in the primary, the Democratic election primary?
Oh, okay, yeah. Which now is like behind us, so it doesn't even matter.
Exactly, but I'm just curious. I want to know.
Yeah,
so,
I'm curious too.
Now, hey, once a bison, always a bison. I rode for my girl Kamala Harris.
Oh, okay.
And then,
she's in the running for VP too.
Dropped out, and so I actually supported Yang.
Okay.
after her, and then Yang dropped out, and I was like, what? Because I really liked, especially because honestly, that the connection there is the ASD, because one of his sons is diagnosed with autism, and I felt like he was really going to bring a lot of positive awareness about that issue, as well as I really liked his, his his ideas about the base income and all. I just thought he was kind of relevant and cool
Yeah.
and pretty progressive. I then voted for Bernie because Bernie was like the one, like the third tier candidate. And I will vote for Joe over Kanye and Trump.
Gotcha. Okay, so
But,
no Kanye. Okay.
Is Kanye still running?
reluctantly, just because it's kind of like, what do you do? Like, I feel
What
like
if,
two of the
what if-
people, might I feel like there might be some mental instability with all of them.
Yeah.
Kanye,
Well, I would assume like some of Kanye's
But
public
you've got-
positions are just like.
That's like Joe. I feel like is more of a listener, and he's more. I don't want to say like more of a follower than a leader, but in some ways, I feel like he's going to do what people who have his ear like tell him to do. Like he's going to be listening to his advisors pretty heavily. I feel like Kanye and Trump don't listen to anybody, and so that's really what scares me. With like they feel a little bit more, loose and unhinged, and that's not a good situation for like the leader of the United States. So I feel like Joe Biden is like a protocol person. There's at least that. There's sort of a sense of we're going, not back to Obama, definitely, but we're going back to, I mean, hey, maybe if he gets a black woman as his VP and something happens to him, then he got the first black male president, and then we'd have our first black female president.
Yeah.
So Joe Biden would get credit for probably both.
And do you, what
But I
is
mean,
the likelihood? Do you think
not
Biden will
wishing
win?
something happens to him, but I'm just saying, like, if he follows through on his promise to have like a black female VP, then that'd be interesting.
Why? Why though? Like, why not just get the best person for the job? Why does it have to be a black woman?
Yeah, but I think that there are some black women who would be the best person for the job.
Okay, like who?
Stacey Abrams.
Stacey Abrams? I don't know
Kamala
much
Harris?
about Stacey Abrams. I thought I was like 100% sure Kamala Harris was going to be president of the United States. Like I was putting all the chips on black, and whew, it came up red.
If anybody is presidential, it's her. Very presidential.
I totally agreed.
Gosh, and Elizabeth Warren crushed the debates. You have to give that to her. Like she's a good debater. I don't necessarily feel like she's the most presidential, but I felt like Kamala Harris was, the most presidential. But Elizabeth Warren, like she has some good comebacks. She's definitely a professor. You can tell that she's like I've studied the stuff, and these are the statistics, and I'm just gonna keep repeating myself until you guys listen.
Who do you think's gonna win then?
Ooh, I don't even know.
Yeah.
Like I don't think Kanye has a chance, but I do think that it's kind of this time right now with the pandemic and the polarization over like the race issue in America. I feel like it's just a very tumultuous time, and I think part of the outcome is going to be based on how the votes are taken. Like if mail-in votes are allowed, I think Joe Biden will win. Barely.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I think Joe Biden will win. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jay,
if people have to go to the polls to vote, then the people who like don't care about face masks, don't care about risking anything over the coronavirus, those are all like Trump supporters.
Also, like
so I think that's why he's pushing for in-person voting, because he thinks that more of his people are going to show up to the polls. But I just moved from Washington State, and we vote by mail. We always voted by mail, so it wasn't even a big deal.
Really?
To like
you vote for in the presidential election? You guys vote by mail in Washington State?
Yeah, every election we vote by mail, and it's the easiest thing ever. Literally, the ballot comes to your mailbox, fill it out. There's no postage required. You can just put it back in your mailbox. They'll pick it up, or you can like drive it down and drop it in the the ballot box. But it's so easy. You don't have to stand in line. And also, you have so much more time to do your homework. Like, you could take 3 or 4 days to like look up every single candidate and really, weigh that instead of in the ballot box. Sometimes you're like, oh, shoot, like, who was this person and what was, for some of these random little positions for like school board or something. And some of the positions don't have a party affiliation and you forgot that this was even going to be on the ballot. You're just like, what is this? So when it comes to your house, you just got, if you have a kid you're up to, you're like, okay, cool, I'll do the next one, tomorrow or whatever. It's just so easy and you can be more thorough. So I think it's kind of a cool process. Yeah.
Jason, did you have anything to add to that?
No, not to that. No, I'm good. I'm good.
What do you think about Kanye running? Like, I kind of get the feeling he'll take some of the black vote away from Joe Biden.
Kanye already showed his colors with his whole mega thing, and now he's kind of, backtracked that or try to walk it back in a way like, oh, I'm no longer pro Trump.
But in some ways, he's more socially conservative.
The effect of him running is kind of pro Trump. Like the votes that he's going to take away are probably not Trump votes.
Well, I mean, he's against Plan B, right? Like vocally, right? Like that's when he came out in his press conference. He's like, I don't want Plan B around.
Yeah, I mean, he came out about like the abortion issue, but that's not necessarily like, I don't really feel like any hardcore base Trump supporters are going to go like, oh, I'm going to go with Kanye over Trump because Trump is already out about the abortion issue. Like they're already. But
what about Biden support? Like Obama was not pro LGBT marriage, like not pro gay marriage, and he got all of the black vote just because he was black, I think. So I mean, like if Kanye picks Jay-Z as his running mate, or God forbid Beyonce, like there's going to be a lot of black people, I think, that will vote for him just because of his color.
Didn't he say no? He's not going to pick either one of those. So I think didn't he say he's going to have like that pastor, Wisconsin or not? What in Wyoming, wherever his ranch is, there's some woman pastor out there that he said he was going to have as his.
Is she black?
Yeah, Michelle Tidball.
I don't even know.
So black female pastor?
I just know she's a pastor, and I was kind of like, what? So I don't think that's going to necessarily fly with people. But
I mean, like, if it's probably going to be close, though, right? So if he gets.
So Obama actually never said he was black until after he was elected president. Do you know that?
Okay, he didn't say he was black, but you can look at him and know that he's black.
But he didn't identify as black.
People who voted for him identified him as black.
Yes,
right?
I agree.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
so, I mean, because he said like and then I think after he was president, then he's like, okay, if you're perceived as African American in the U.S., you are African American.
Yeah.
So then he also was like, I don't know, somebody used that there's this book called Fading Out White and Black by Lisa Kingsolver. I can't remember her whole last name.
Sorry,
but anyway.
Lisa. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Anyway, she's from the UK, but it was all about Obama and me and how like Obama and Rachel are helping, like somehow like brought the issue front and are fading out like whiteness and blackness in America, like moving us toward a post-racial society. It was an interesting book. It was actually a really interesting book. It's very academic.
Lisa Simone Kingstone.
Trans. I don't know if you've read Trans, Gender and Race in an Age of Unsettled Identities, but it's about Caitlyn Jenner and me, basically, by Rogers Brubacher out of UCLA. So like a lot of different books that and articles, of course, and stuff, but more on the academic side, it's taken as like a serious thing to consider as a social construct, whereas in mainstream society, people are so habit-based that like we just have to say black and white, and it has to be like race and or culture, at all times. So it's just our habit pattern. It's understandable. It's what everybody grew up with. So yeah, I thought it was interesting that Obama was, kind of had that definition. Like, he separated himself from Black men in America in a sense because he grew up with a white mother and he, with white grandparents and just kind of like I didn't feel like I belonged to that community necessarily. And I think Michelle really is his like solid link there to um, Black culture in America in a sense, you know, and of course being perceived as, like you said, if you're perceived as African American, then of course you're gonna have those experiences,
Yeah.
you know, from other
Yeah.
people who are seeing you a certain kind of way.
I,
So
I kind of
yeah.
I kind of see it more like a class thing than a race thing. 'Cause, like he went to Harvard, right? I think Michelle went to Harvard
Yeah.
too. And so
Yeah.
like just the sphere that these guys exist in, like I don't see them as oppressed in any way. If you're a black person living in a bad neighborhood in Chicago, like I don't think you have anything in common with Barack Obama or Michelle Obama. You know what I mean? Like regardless of the color of your skin, I think you have nothing in common with these people. They just live in such a different universe for you. Like you wouldn't even if you spent days or weeks or months with them, you'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Nothing like me. Like I don't live
Yeah.
anything like I live.
But like that kid and me even and Barack Obama would all have something in common in terms of getting hate from racist people, you know, like from the KK, like the KKK, the KKK hates all of us.
Well,
So
are you overly concerned with the KKK? Do you think they're a big problem in the United States of America?
So when I was living in North Idaho, there were 5 hate groups that had their headquarters there, and I was concerned. Yes, I had a concealed carry permit for pistol license. I carry my pistol everywhere with me at all times because I also had like death threat phone calls happening
Wow.
because of my activism work there at the Human Rights Education, and I became the director the same month and year that Obama was elected. And so there was kind of like a resurgence of Aryan Nation membership, and the neo-Nazis there specifically are groups that they have to do something. They have to perform an action every day to prove their allegiance to the neo-Nazi cause. So they're not just passive people who talk about it. Like they do stuff. Like they put a swastika on your door. They, you know, put a noose behind your house. So do these, but there's always that question of like, how far will this person go, especially to a single mom, kids, you know. I was always worried about my sons and my own safety in North Idaho for that reason, you know, because those
Okay.
groups are
Yeah.
very, very active there. And there's the Grand Wizard of the White Knights of the KKK, John Winkler. Like he would come out with all his guns strapped on him and like camo gear and like the Confederate flag, and you know, be yelling at me and stuff like that. So like that was
really?
kind of intimidating, you know, and I didn't ever back down, but I also knew that there was a chance that there would be like the ultimate price, you know, to pay. Like that, I mean, there was that threat, and you never know like what people are gonna do. I mean, some people are crazy. You don't know, like how far are they gonna go? Are they gonna rape you? Are they gonna kill you? Are they just gonna like, you know, do property damage? Like they broke in and took like $13,000 of property from. I was living with a boyfriend. Actually moved into his house because of some of the hate crimes and stuff going on, and they like broke in and stole like all his stuff, you know, guns, everything. So you know, I mean, just yeah, it puts you in a sense of unrest and anxiety, I guess, when people are making these kind of threats and harassing you in that way. But do I think that the KKK is capable of doing harm? Yes.
Well,
So
okay,
when you say
Under Trump's
KKK,
administration, I feel like there's been more of an emboldened sense of like white nationalists feeling like, oh, we can get out, you know, be George Zimmerman, you know, and do whatever.
when you say KKK, are you speaking broadly about like racist people and kind of like organized racism, or are you speaking like specifically about the KKK? Because I'm looking at the SPLC right now. It says like 5,000 to 8,000 members, like within the United States.
And like all the people, the thing I was gonna say,
both, like
Okay.
both, like the KKK are one. Like I said, there are like 5 hate groups in North Idaho. I don't know how many hate groups are nationwide. I think the Southern Poverty Law Center has those numbers, but you know, I feel like anybody who has the idea of white superiority or of the success of Black and brown people being the threat toward white people in America, or moving toward the future. I think that all of those groups have been emboldened by Trump being in office and have acted out more than they might have otherwise done if he had not been the president.
Yeah, so I think we have a strong disagreement here because I feel like since Trump has taken office, like social media has cracked down so hard on hate speech and so hard on any inclination of someone being a racist. And not just social media, like people in general. I feel like there's this just virulent hatred for anyone who's ever said or done anything that they perceive as racist. And it seems like it's completely unacceptable in Western society, specifically the United States of America. Like, I can't imagine somebody going in for a job interview and being like, yeah, it's okay to say openly racist things. Like, I can't imagine people going to a school board meeting or even in the neighborhood talking loudly about it. I feel like people, are either self-censoring or being completely canceled over those kind of things. And to me, like, I'm an outsider, but United States of America looks safer for Black people than it's ever been. So
Yeah, no, but I agree with that being like one of the aftershock sort of effects of the recent Black Lives Matter movement. I think that it has put public pressure on people to not be racist. I think that that's a good thing. Like, that's a good thing that people are feeling a little bit more self-aware. I don't necessarily think that with that comes, like, some people are going to take it a little bit too far and label things as racist that aren't, or whatever. But I think that for the most part, the core of that is a good thing. And yeah, there are going to be a few like misunderstandings, but I think overall, the Karens and the whatever that are out there that are like, so people still do say things and do things that expose themselves. And I think it's important, kind of as a Rorschach test or whatever, like, what are we going to do with that? Is that socially acceptable or is it not socially acceptable? And then if it's not socially acceptable, should that mean that this person loses all right to life in society? Or should that mean that you just tell this person, like, you know what, you need to change that because that hurts, that's hurtful. So you shouldn't, do that or say that again, because that, like I think there are some situations where people are just ignorant and they don't really even know that what they just did or said was wrong or was hurtful or was racist. There are other situations where I think it's very intentional and deliberate. And so, like you said, those things are all kind of being lumped together right now.
yeah,
But
totally.
hopefully, as a society, we can have a little bit of grace to let people change, because there are, you're going to find some compromise in everything. Like one of Langston's ABA program threw a big party for like Dr. Seuss's birthday. Like, what do you do? Like, Dr. Seuss racist, by the way. Like, are we just gonna like sweep that under the rug and pretend that's not the case, or are we gonna say like, well, but most people from that era were racist. Like, people did things or said things 40 years ago, like you said with Brett Kavanaugh. Are we gonna justify it or contextualize it? Or are we, like, what are we going to do? Are we going to like never read a Dr. Seuss book again? Like, how radical are we going to be about our stance on these issues? And I think that's kind of being sorted out right now. I don't feel like, necessarily judging the people that are judging is really the right, which is another reason why in 2015 I kind of like did a lot of listening in a lot of the interviews. Like, I let, like, on the reel and stuff, like, people just said all this stuff. I didn't come in fighting. I didn't attack them, because I felt like people just needed to vent and needed to say like what they thought they knew. And it wasn't even about me. It was about them. It was about their need to draw the boundary lines with their own identity, and to keep the group membership, within their own, view or boundaries or whatever rules, more than it was, like, they weren't really saying anything about me as a person. They thought they were, but like, they didn't even know me. They didn't really, so I don't know. Like, right now, I feel like there's a lot of judging going on, and as a whole, that's that's not the best, but
I mean, I think there's a lot of common ground there because we kind of agree in open conversation to sort political problems and social problems out. Our
Mhm.
one of our last guests was very far right, very anti-Jewish. Yeah, it was actually there was so much hate speech in that podcast we couldn't put it on YouTube. And
Right.
like me and Jason were wondering about some things like, well, why give him a platform, and like, should we? How hard should we push back? And like, we don't agree with him on everything, but I think we kind of came to the conclusion that like the only way to move forward is through conversation. The only
Mhm.
way is to kind of like hash these things out. And some people are never gonna be on your side, but
Right.
we need to live in a society that's civilized, where
Mhm.
people can, if they can't get along together, they can at least live beside each other or close to each other without violence and without huge conflict, right?
Well, and I really believe in that, like the power of agree to disagree. Like
Sure.
you can agree to disagree and still be human and cordial and have manners, towards people.
Yes.
But beyond having manners, like really, you know, like I said, that line between free speech and hate speech, like you don't have the right to harass somebody. And some people feel like, if you say that everybody has their own opinion and stuff, that just gives you a green light to do whatever and say whatever. And,
Sure.
that means that you could just, if like your guest, I don't know who your guest was, but like if he was anti Semitic, like that he could then, go torch, you know, a rabbi's house or something. Like, no, that's not okay. There
Yeah.
needs to be a boundary line of, okay, you do not infringe on somebody else's human rights. And if you have a worldview that tells you to do that,
Yeah.
then yeah, we should maybe like
But
encourage you to examine that worldview because it's
the
kind
line
of
would be
like, look,
actions. Like the line would be violence.
it would
It's
be actions, but I think that some speech is an action. Like
okay.
like the N word, I think is more of an action. For example, not just the N word, but other words too. Like Langston just brought me his plate. He's nonverbal, but like he communicates through props. So he's
Yeah.
like he hands me his plate when he
He's
wants more
hungry.
food.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, here you
Yeah.
go, just stay
I
with
do
your
that. I do
plate.
that to my wife too.
Mm.
Yeah. So anyway, he's being patient, but yeah, I think that there needs to be a delineating line of when a word like with AOC right now. Like you can't just call somebody a fucking bitch, or whatever, and then just like I don't know, like in that context, like that's not a professional thing to do from colleague to colleague.
Sorry, who called her a fucking bitch?
And like I can't remember his name, a Republican congressman. Yeah,
Well,
so like in that scenario, like you don't go over to you don't just yell at your neighbor. Like
no.
like there's a certain standard of human decency, and I think that that should be upheld. At the same time, we should be able to have vigorous discussions and debates and dialogue about these issues
But
without cutting each other's heads off.
just to clarify, you don't think that he should have been
Yeah.
allowed to call the person a fucking bitch?
Yeah, that's a good.
Well, I think in that situation, they're both elected officials, and there's a certain level of decorum and professionality that's expected at work. So if you did that at your workplace to your
Yeah, okay.
coworker, you could get fired because you're violating protocol. In the same sense, like,
Yeah.
if you're doing that to your neighbor, that would be harassing. That would be a definition of harassment to me. Like somebody's like yelling at me, whether they're using B, C, N, whatever word, like I've been
Yeah.
called all of it. Like like all of that stuff, that creates a hostile environment. You have to like like then you're gonna have tension like walking to your house, if that neighbor is like yelling at you every day. So that is an actionable type of that moves language beyond just a word into an action because it's affecting somebody in a visceral sense. Like that's harassment. So I think harassment should never be Langston. Harassment I have some good backlighting now.
That's
Um
great.
like harassment should never be allowed. Like there should be zero tolerance for harassment. I think that should
Yeah.
be a thing. Like you can have debate, dialogue, discussion, you shouldn't just go harass somebody.
Sure,
Like,
but okay,
that's
so like, but
not
who
okay.
decides? Who decides what harassment is? Because it
We
seems
should
like,
define it. We
well,
should
okay, so
define
like we just did a review of the Robin DiAngelo's book. Are you
Mm.
familiar with Robin DiAngelo?
No.
White
Yes.
fragility, yeah.
White
Yes.
fragility.
Yes.
Yeah, and so it seems like a lot of the stuff that she takes as slights or harassment are pretty
Mhm.
minor. They're pretty, inoffensive to me. Whereas, like, if somebody said something like that to me, I gave the
Like
example.
microaggressions.
Yeah, microaggressions. Somebody's called me a
Yeah.
packy before, and I was kind of like, I don't give a shit. Like it seems to be like in the eye of the beholder almost a lot of the time. And so
Yeah.
it's hard to draw these lines because, like, if somebody says something to you, you might really be scared and upset. And if someone says something to me, like, I'm a big guy, I'm male, I could probably punch him in the fucking face and I won't be so worried about it, right? Does that make sense?
Presumably, yeah. Like, I mean, I think part of it has to do with a physical presence, but I think also it has to do with just the whole context. Like somebody could
Yeah.
say something to you that would be very offensive, like, about like your child or something. Like people could say
Yeah.
something and it could look like whatever it is that cuts at you. I think that's like the line where it becomes like an action. And maybe that's different for every single person, and maybe it's
Yeah.
not. Like maybe there are some things that we could define objectively and say, okay, this is where, and that's what that malicious harassment law. That's what like. There's a list of things that are malicious harassment, but then you also go to court and hash it out with the judge, and the judge or jury decides like, yeah, that was malicious harassment. So there's a process there.
Okay.
I think in society right now we don't really have a process because one person's going to be offended by a statement, the next person's not, and they could both belong to the same group. Like both people could be black male or white female or whatever, and one person could be offended and the other person could not. And some of that has to do with personal like self-esteem and security, and some of it has to do with class. Like you don't
Yep.
like you don't really care because you're good.
Yep.
Like people can say Kim Kardashian is blackfishing and cultural appropriating, whatever. She still has her millions and is push. Like people could come against Caitlyn Jenner for transitioning, but like Caitlyn Jenner hasn't made like like it doesn't touch the person in the same way as if you like cancel somebody who actually like needed their job, and then
Yeah.
like now they have to really grind it out because any employer that hires them is going to be like that employer that hired that person, and it's like that whole perception thing. I think where it comes back to cancel culture, I think we need to be careful about applying these things in broad strokes, and at the same time like there can be some objective definition between free speech and hate speech, for example, or malicious harassment. And
Okay,
I think we
what
should
about
sort
this?
it out.
We've got some comments going on, and people are talking about there was a brewery in Canada that had a beer called
Yeah.
White Woman, and it was called racist, and they pulled the beer. That seems like a bit of a stretch for hate speech. That seems like a bit of a stretch for something offensive. What
I
do you
would
think
say
about
more than a bit. But
Yeah.
Well,
it was
then
it was
there's
called
another-
Karen Cherry
like,
Sour. It
one
wasn't
of
called
my
White
favorite
Woman.
beers is called Strawberry Blonde.
Well, okay, but like when
And it has, but it's like, okay, so something with the like Aunt Jemima and like Uncle Ben.
Okay, I'll give you a good example, Rich. I'll give you an example. So there's this cheese in Australia right now that's going around the viral videos. It's called Coon. It's a cheese called Coon, and it has no racial background, and it's not tied to race. But
What's its reason for being called that?
I'm not sure, but it's like it just is not bred of anything racial. It just is a coincidence that it's now a racial term, or has been for a while. But
That's been for a long time. Somebody just didn't do their
But
homework
no,
on
but
that one.
no, okay, but it's just off the top of my head. So like
Okay.
you get
yeah.
It was
this
named
thing-
after a cheesemaker named Edward
Okay.
William Coon.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now it's kind of like people look at that word and they're like, oh my god, and they're freaking out, and it's like cancel, 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 cancel. But the intentions are innocent, right? And I feel like a lot of white people in the United States and Canada and the Western world feel like a lot of their shit is being canceled over people like this who are kind of like overreacting, as they would put it, and they're oversensitive and they kind of need to calm down. And there's this kind of feeling that white people are being targeted a lot right now. They're kind of under a microscope, whereas like people from other cultures can do kind of whatever they want in a racist way. Will say, "Oh, well, that's not even racist. Like that's not. There's nothing wrong with what they're doing."
That
That
Nick
makes
Yeah,
that Nick
well,
Cannon thing comes to mind.
there's definitely more pressure on white people per se. Like James Baldwin said, there are no white people, there's people that think they're white. So for all the people who think they're white, that identify as white, yeah, there's more pressure on them to catch up, to get educated. And I think that it was Jesse Jackson said, like, diversity education is for white people because everybody else already knows how to like interact interculturally. So I think that a lot of this is just an education problem. Like, we haven't taught this in K through 12 schools. We haven't actually taught all of American history, or else people would know that coon is a term that's been around for a long time. Like, people would know these things. It would be commonplace. And so these issues where somebody like built a whole company based on that, well, I'm sorry, but that, like, just because you were ignorant and didn't, like, you weren't educated, yeah, that wasn't your fault, but it is a fault of the whole system and structure, and that does need to change. So by bringing awareness about the cheese, then we use that as like a way to educate about the larger issue. And whether or not, like, that person wants to still sell their cheese under that name, it's not like the awareness is what caused the issue. You know what I mean? Like, people aren't just making an issue over nothing. This is something that goes back. And I think that when it comes to, like, so Aunt Jemima maple syrup, right? They're redoing those labels now
uh-huh.
because all of a sudden it's like, okay, now that's racist because the maple syrup, yeah, but it's been something that people have been talking about for years. Like, this is a mammy figure. There's the angry black woman, the Jezebel, the mammy, the Hottentot, like the four like stereotypical roles that black women are placed into, or like caricatures of black women. The Hottentot is like, big booty black woman. The
Oh, okay,
the
okay, okay.
Jezebel, so like every black woman who's got some kind of fame has to like show their butt, like prove that they have a big butt, or whatever. Like that goes all the way back to Sarah Bartman, Venus Hottentot, who was set in a cage to be viewed by Europeans as like, look at her butt. So all of this has a very like racist history, all of these roles. So like the mammy figure of Aunt Jemima goes back to that racist history of oppression, and you're not going to be like, the mammy is not sexualized, but the mammy is going to be like lonely, like pretty much just taking on all the needs of all the white kids and the black kids, and like everybody's kid, like, just absorbing everybody else's energy. Oprah kind of got, in academia at one point, people were talking about how Oprah was sort of like a mammy figure in a sense, because she was taking like having all like nurturing all these little white kids and their problems. That's kind of controversial, but I'm just saying, like, there's some ways in which his roles have been acted out and replayed. And I think to talk about it and to challenge it, to say like, let's take Aunt Jemima off that bottle. Let's do away with Mrs. Butterworth, and while we're at it, Uncle Ben's rice. And then people are like, what about the cream? What about the cream of wheat guy that has like the but all of these were like subservient roles. They were all serving the master. Like, you're gonna get your. So it's kind of cliche, and I think it's like past due to challenge these cliches and to kind of like rework what we think is.
It just seems like, okay, so like, do you want to move to a world where race is like hair color, where it doesn't matter, or because it seems like you do kind of both, like you're feeding both pools. Like, you're saying, like, there's only one race, there's only the human race, but at the same time, race is extremely important to a lot of people, and we need to be super sensitive towards somebody's experience because of their race. So I'm
No,
just kind of
I'm saying because like we need to be sensitive to historic oppression.
yeah.
So when I'm talking about like Aunt Jemima and stuff, these are roles that have been cast because of the race worldview. Yes, I believe that we should be moving toward a time when there is an acknowledgement of we are all the human race, don't meet the biological zoological requirements for separate races, and so therefore we are going to cancel racism. Like that's the ultimate goal.
But so like if we lived in that world, we wouldn't care about the Aunt Jemima.
Yeah, but we don't live in that world yet. We don't live in that world yet.
Okay,
So, like,
okay, but we're not going to get there by focusing on all these tiny little microaggressions, right? Like it seems to me like the best way to move forward is just forget about it.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get there by ignoring all the microaggressions. I think
Okay.
in order to end racism, we have to do both. We have to call out racism. Whether it's the creation of the race worldview or a historic oppression that has been perpetuated through generations that's still being enacted out today through maple syrup bottle or whatever it is. I think just for just if nothing else, for the importance of education. Like I really believe that people have the right to know. Like that family has the right to know that coon is a slur. Like that's a word that I don't know. Like that's a thing that can pack a punch. And then with that information, you can make a decision whether or not you want to still push that and defy that. Like I don't care and da da da. But I think that we can't pretend that history didn't happen.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. I understand that, but like, what about people like Nick Cannon right now? So Nick Cannon just recently got in trouble for saying some things about Jewish people and white people, and he immediately had to apologize for the Jewish people. No apology for the white people, and nobody seems to care. So like he got semi-canceled for ripping on Jews. Nothing happened to him for ripping on white people. If he had just kept, it would have been safe.
He got canceled from a platform,
yeah,
but he got another platform offered to, So, but anyway, yeah, I think right now, people are just going to need to be patient a little bit for just this moment, this season. I'm not saying tit for tat, but there's going to be some kind of like shock absorption in the white community that needs to happen from just, again, like for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Like part of the reaction right now is coming across as like anti-white. And I know a lot of people are like pro-black does not mean anti-white.
Yep.
At the same time, like there are some pro-black people that are anti-white. So like it can be either or, some people are, like I said, prejudiced about white people. I actually have some prejudice toward white people. That's because my family, like, I kind of feel a certain kind of way around some people that like, and I realize that, and I try and, challenge that, logically, but
so it
I
seems
think
like
everybody has their prejudice, and some of those are connected to trauma, and some of those are just connected to being taught to think of this group or that gender or that religion or whatever is in a certain light. And so some of it can be undone logically, and then other things are a little more visceral, when it's tied to like an oppression or an abuse situation, then it's kind of like a little more visceral, and it takes it takes a little more work to come to a place of like, we're all a human family, including you guys over there who hate my guts and like don't want to be my cousin, but
not us,
we're still
not
in the
us.
human family.
All right. Like, all right. All right. That's a good answer. Thanks. That's I mean, it feels like you're kind of letting the pendulum swing into white people a bit, and you're like, it's okay. Like it'll come back to a place where we're all comfortable. Is that more or less correct?
Yeah, I think it's okay to let white people spread a little bit right now. I mean, just because like nobody's ever had to do that before on that side, and I think that it'll be kind of a teachable moment in a sense. I mean,
I wouldn't want anybody to suffer any kind of oppression based on their race. So I
Yeah,
would
but
disagree
I don't
there.
think it's oppression. Like to challenge something like the name of that cheese is not oppression.
Well, maybe not the cheese
Like it's
specifically.
an educational, it's a teaching moment. I think that sometimes a teaching moment makes people feel uncomfortable, and that lack of comfort is not oppression.
Sure, but like maybe not the cheese, but like for the example, you could be. It's okay to be proud of your race if you're not
Mm.
white, but it's not okay to be proud of your race if you're white. It's very looked down upon, and I don't see anything wrong with white people being proud of their culture and their history. Or
Mm.
Polish, English, Irish, whatever. Like,
Well, but see, I don't think there's anybody saying don't be proud of your culture, and that's the difference. Like when we start talking about race, then it's like it becomes this like sinister thing that engages. When we talk about like, oh, I want to go to a cultural festival
yeah,
about like Irish culture, they're like, oh, that sounds fun. Maybe I'll get some green beer, or I'll get a little clover leaf thing, or whatever. Like people think, of that. Like culture is fun, and I think that we move toward move away from this race worldview and move toward culture, because culture is not biological, also something that's more of a sense of pride. And it's, yeah, there's a stigma, like you don't want to be proud, like you don't want to be white and proud, but you
yeah,
proud of your French culture. Like that's okay. Like you have all this cuisine that you cook that's French, and like you have like blah 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 whatever it is, and so that's okay to be proud of that. But like to be proud to be white basically underscores all of that colonial, that that history of oppression and chattel slavery and da, 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 like how did white become a thing, and like when did the Jews become white, and when did the Irish become white, because at one point they weren't white. At one point people from Mexico were considered white, and then there was a time when that changed. And like why did these boundary lines change, and why did one group, we started with 3 racial groups in America, now we have like 15 categories on the census. I'm like 10% North African if you count my DNA test, but like North African, even on the census, is considered white. But that's also part of like, this racing of Egyptian culture and stuff. Like, well, that's cool, so we'll just appropriate that for like quasi-European. So there's like so much stuff. It's so complex and it's so deep, and it really deserves like this deep academic dive. And that's why I want to have these kind of discussions
yeah,
at universities and in
yeah.
places where we can bring actual information and scholarship to the table, and not just talk about like our feelings. Because I think a lot of things right now we're just talking about our feelings, like whether I feel offended or not. And so that's really hard to get any kind of like boundary lines or any kind of like shape of this thing. Like what are we
Yeah.
doing, and is it okay, and what should we do different? It's just too hard when we're just all in our feelings, and it's
I,
a
I thought you were
reactive.
saying that was the definition of, or like that was how you define hate speech. Is that like if you're hurting someone, if you're offending someone?
Malicious harassment
Oh, hate speech.
is, yeah, or hate speech. So like, yeah, if you're harassing, I think that like that, if you want to go there, as far as an example, in my son, so Franklin, when Franklin was in second grade, um he had he had a few different kids in his, so I was like, so I came home from school, he was like, I only the only black kid in my class again this year. And I was like, well, what about Angelique, what about this other, and he's like, well, they don't know they're black, they're not black. In other words, he was like, they're okay with people saying, calling them the N-word or calling them things. They don't care. They aren't offended. They're being raised by a white mom, and they don't know any different. So they don't have that same mentality. And so if that happens, that kid that does that is not going to get in trouble, because the target or whatever is not like, doesn't care. Whereas with Franklin, that same year, like one of the kids called him a monkey on the playground, and he was, he told the teacher like, that's not okay, like this is offensive, like monkeys, black people were compared to monkeys, and this whole evolutionary, the whole Darwin thing and whatever. Like this is not okay to call a black person a monkey for this reason, because it's basically saying a person is less than human, and there's a racist history of that. So at first the teachers were like, no, there's no problem. Kids are like monkey, fine. And then when they were like educated about it, then like, okay, yeah, that is messed up. And so the kid got suspended and for a day, but then the parents were so upset that the kid got suspended that they like pulled him out of school and homeschooled him. And so, but they have like a Confederate flag on their Jeep, when they picked him up. So it's kind of like, maybe that was like in that situation, my son was picking up on that, like that vibe, like was an action behind that, or that came from a place of being taught, racism, as opposed to just something that like another Black kid didn't care about, So
I've got another question for you. So like you taught in universities for 10 years. Do you ever think about putting your lectures online for people to see? Because there's kind of like a big thing on YouTube right now about that, like people watching online lectures.
Yeah, it's so I have some on, like I have a little crash course on race and culture, race, culture, and ethnicity on my YouTube channel, but it's like you have to go down like 50 videos to find it. But I kind of did a condensed course, just an intro on what the definitions are of race, culture, and ethnicity, why they're different, what we mean when we say Black, in terms of culture versus race, history behind it, why it matters.
Well, like honestly, like
also,
go ahead.
like,
Well, let me just jump in. Let me just jump in here. So like,
yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry to cut you off, but like, you seem to have a lot of interesting opinions on these things, and they're like, I'm actually quite surprised. Like, I didn't think you would be so kind of middle of the road and reasonable about all these. I thought you were going to be much further left and much more kind of like activisty, stereotypically activisty.
Whatever that is. Okay.
Well, okay, so like I think
like activists can be intellectual too.
Okay, but if you like flesh these out in like 1 hour podcasts, 1 hour lectures, I would be much more interested in listening to that than listening to the Robin DiAngelo book. And she is like an academic that's praised and loved.
Wait, why is that, Mike?
So is like Jane Elliott, but because they both embrace the white label, like.
Well, I think sorry, just to answer Jason's question, I think Rachel has a lot more to say on the topic of race and what it means and how it affects people than someone like Robin DiAngelo.
Rachel, what did you think of Robin DiAngelo's book? Did you read it?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with a lot of the points. I do think that both with the White Fragility book and even with what was that, Peggy? I'm forgetting her last name. Anyway, the chick that wrote the essay about white privilege, Peggy McIntosh. So both of those situations, like when I the white fragility and the white privilege thing, I think that there needs to be more nuance in it and a little bit more of an intersectionality between like how does class and gender and religion and these other things, even disability and stuff, like intersect with this idea of race. Because when we deal with white privilege, for example, in Peggy McIntosh's essay, it's like white privilege is, unpacking the knapsack of white privilege, I think is the title of it. Became hugely popular. And everybody's like, yeah, that's so great. Let's talk about white privilege. And it's like, oh my gosh, and then some people are like, we don't like the word privilege. We want to just say advantage because that sounds better. I think that's what Oprah said. Like that's less offensive to white people if you just say you have an advantage. But so it breaks it down like you have a trust fund and you have your college paid for and you have all these things. And I'm like, dude, like some people, I actually went in my classes, my introduction to race and culture classes, I actually did like the privilege walk, whereas you like take a step forward for one thing, you take a step back, like did you get your college paid for by your parents, step forward, or did you like get a car when you're given to you, or whatever, like all these different points, right? And so that ended up really scrambling the mix where it wasn't like all the white students ended up in front and all the black students ended up in back. It's like you have points of privilege for different things, money being a huge one. And then, that opens all kind of doors of opportunity if you just have money. And, if you're straight, versus like another thing I think that helps me in terms of being nuanced and stuff. I'm bisexual, so like even in that sense, like sexual orientation, there's a fluidity there that is not necessarily recognized or understood by all people. Like I don't care what body parts you have. I just care like that we have like that there's this chemistry and this vibe. That's what I care about. Like we have that, do we click in that sexual way? And if we do, cool. Like we'll work with whatever body parts are present, But I know that not everybody, has that orientation. And in the same way, not everybody approaches the race topic with like, let's look at intersectionality. A lot of people are trying to like amputate it, make it very binary and very like everybody black is poor and disadvantaged and everybody white has a silver spoon and is, fine and privileged. And I think that Western societies do tend to favor people with lighter complexion, like light skin privilege and white privilege is a thing. But there are also people who are melanin deficient, don't necessarily have class privilege, and that practice different religions and that have different levels of ability. And so I think that it's interesting that like Dr. Reverend William Barber recently left the NAACP to fight for the Poor People's Campaign because of that intersectionality. Because he's saying like this is the movement right now needs to not just be about like black and white. It really needs to be about power and money. Like people that don't have healthcare versus people that do have healthcare. Like having healthcare is a privilege, a point of privilege. Having your own transportation versus having to ride public transportation. So I think that we just need to talk about these things in more complex and nuanced ways. And right now, our society is not set up to do that because the average view time, I think, of YouTube videos is 3 minutes. Social media sound bites are just like, one and done. And I saw the memes, so I know everything, about this situation. And I think that's really what will get us out of this kind of box of, binary about everything and being too, simplified. And is that, people need to start reading more and people need to, fact check and look into the situation, allow for some gray areas. Not all black and white.
Rachel, I can hear a lot of noise going on there. Are you okay to go on, or is that it for you? I know we've gone over time for you.
Yeah, I probably need to get off soon because Langston's being very patient about his. I still have his plate over here, but he's kind of.
Is there anything you want to like run over in 5 minutes before you go? Is there anything you want to talk about?
No, not necessarily.
What's in the future for you?
I know that we were talking about cancel culture, and I guess back to the beginning, kind of like I feel like it's a tool that can be used to push a movement or push a cause with organizations and companies and stuff like that. But when it's levied toward just an individual person, I think it's kind of unfair to be a judge and jury point blank on social media. So, but anyway,
I think you made that point well. What Jason asked, what's in the future for you?
I don't know. I'm like I like to keep my not just keep my options open, but I like to keep my spirit kind of hopeful. I would love to get back into and be more attached to an organization again in terms of activism and advocacy work, because I feel like I can be a more effective advocate when attached to an organization because you have that collective action, you can get more done. So I hope to kind of get back there. Meanwhile, I'm going to be doing art and hair, and even if it takes just teaching, taking up a little class at community college or something like that and building back. Basically, I just have to rebuild my whole career. I was winning awards for my teaching and mentoring a month before, and winning awards for my leadership like a month before. And then
If
it's
you
like she has white parents, and it's all like,
do
therefore,
you want to plug your website?
I got it in the
yeah,
description, but yeah.
Oh, great, great. So
yeah.
people can take a look at your art.
So my website, I have original art, I have signed prints, I have signed books. I will autograph a book and write you a little note in it and send it out at just retail cost. I have pictures because I like those. And I also sell melanin spectrum dolls, which are this little collection of dolls that all have like different skin tones, all have like natural hair. But it's like the melanin spectrum level 1 to 5. So that's a good tool for like preschools or I'm just myname.com. RACLDOLEZAL. And yeah, and I'm on Instagram. My Twitter, my verified Twitter got hacked, so I don't have access to that. My verified Facebook page got hacked and erased, so I don't have
Good.
that anymore. But I do have my
Jesus.
verified Instagram. So you can find me on Instagram at Rachel A. Dolezal. And I am on Facebook and Twitter, but I just have like a tiny little account with very few followers and it's not verified. So, yep. And I have my YouTube channel where I cook and I do hair tutorials.
Yeah, I've seen your
and I do
I've
little
seen your cooking. I like it.
educational things. And I have a little piece about reform, like what I think should be done about police reform right now, coming from
Yeah.
that position, my
Hey,
background and experience with that.
You know what? We were thinking about doing something on prison reform and police reform. We'd love to have you on in the future. You're a great guest. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Sure.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and I'm totally looking forward to see the commissioned artwork. Very excited.
Definitely,
Yeah, I'm
definitely.
excited about it too.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch, Rachel. Thanks so much. You probably should go take care of your family.
Little Langston, you got to give him props. He's a patient
Yeah,
kiddo.
he's been very patient. Yeah, I definitely feel that. I feel similar with my family when they pop in and out of the podcast all the time.
Great. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, and you guys have a good weekend.
Thank you
take
so
care. We'll be in
much.
touch.
We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
All right.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah. You too.
All right, Mike, let me just adjust this template because the visual viewers are experiencing a mess right now. But speak and be heard.
Yeah. Wow. What a big get for us, Rachel Dolezal.
Oh yeah.
I'm actually very surprised at how well that went. I thought we were gonna butt heads a lot more.
Oh really? Did you?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
so I told you that I would only butt heads if she addressed me specifically, because Mike and Mike was in a conversation with Rachel in the previous week, the week leading up to this podcast, and she had listened to our transracialism episode, and she had a couple problems with some things I said. And I was like, well, I'm familiar with your rebuttal, but I have a rebuttal to that rebuttal, and I'm not backing down from this.
We kind of didn't get into that, so I mean, hopefully we can have her on again and maybe a bit more. But yeah, I thought she was a great guest. I thought we were pretty fair to her. I thought we were pretty cordial. I hope she's happy with it. Nice to see Nuka Zeus, friend of the show, in the chats. Nicotina. Andre Nicotina, I saw you pushing back on some of the white, black kind of racism stuff. I tried to get into it a little bit, but I didn't want to be too hard on our guest, especially considering the last podcast we had where we also gave
exactly. And part of this, like, I mean, like, I assume some people that are listening to this are like, wow, they just like let her speak and they didn't push back on anything. Part of where we are right now, like, we need to know our place. Like, we are a podcast live stream with maybe being generous on average 200 hits an episode. She is a goddess on the screen when she comes onto our stage. Like, and we need to treat her as such. Yeah.
We've ever had.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's a mainstream personality, right?
Yeah.
Handsome Truth maybe would have been bigger. Not that we don't appreciate Handsome Truth. Definitely appreciate him for coming on the show. He may have been bigger on YouTube, if you don't count how many times he was canceled. But Rachel Dolezal, definitely more mainstream guest.
Oh yeah.
Biggest one we've had by far. Super happy to have her on. I think it went well. I think the conversation went really well and very cordial. Uh, Fleshed out a lot of stuff. I really liked the Sean King back and forth. I thought her view on politics, her lukewarmness to Joe Biden, is refreshing. It's nice to see. It's nice to see people who have different political views from us kind of come to meet us halfway or quarter way, maybe. And I thought she gave us a good set of breathing room, like a bit of breathing room to talk and flesh some things out. And she wasn't rude at all.
Oh no.
Yeah, like totally took our ideas seriously, and I really appreciate it.
I did get the impression she didn't like me much, but I'm not sure if that was just in my head and paranoid. But
I think
she
that's in
definitely
your
didn't
head,
like
to
me
be honest.
interrupting. She definitely didn't like me interrupting. I'd be like, oh, but on that, what about this? And then it would just that would just kind of float away into the ether.
steamrolls
Like,
you.
yeah.
That's okay though. We should let
Oh
our
yeah,
guests
oh
have
yeah,
the majority
of
the
course.
time.
No, and I like even if we had like a million followers, I would want to grant the guest, their chance to say whatever they want to say. Really.
Yeah, that's great. Do you want to throw in a song and take like a little 2-minute break and then come back and do?
I actually wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind using the washroom. We could, yeah. You know what? Yeah, we could both leave at the same time.
Yeah, throw on you got something to throw on? Maybe a little egg white?
Oh, egg white. I mean, I think I only have like 1 or 2 egg white songs on my computer, but let me just throw on because I've got some eccentric stuff on here. So let me just open up my audio folder.
Find something a little relevant, perhaps.
Yeah, we've got standard British dialect, but we're not going to do that. Yeah, I also don't want us to get a copyright stripe, and I also don't want us to be sitting here waiting. So we're just going to go with the guy that makes our... actually a bunch of cool stuff. Yeah, we're just going to go with the guy that makes our intro and outro. And I'm going to pick a random song by him. And we're going to go. And we're going to be back in like 5 minutes.
4 minutes. All right. See you soon, guys.
I don't care what you say. If you ever touch him again, I will freaking kill you. I'm gonna pull out a goddamn shotgun and blow your damn head off. Do you understand? Little worthless piece of crap.
Yeah, Andre Nicotina in chat soldier. Yeah, I think it went pretty well too. I mean, yeah, a lot of restraint for sure. When I'm watching stuff, I tend to like fireworks and drama and everything. But I mean, ultimately, as a platform, you want to have people feel welcome, and you want future guests, most importantly, to feel like, oh, I can come on, and they're not just gonna attack me and jump on me and everything. So I feel like it's a good attitude to have. Yo,
What's up? What's up? What's up?
I was just talking to Andre Nicotina for a second there.
Oh yeah, what's he saying?
Oh, he was just saying he thought it was a decent interview, and he noticed the same feelings, presumably about perhaps her having prejudice against me for being
White person?
an Aryan, um,
Ah,
a noble Aryan.
you know
But
what? I think I'm gonna defend Rachel Dolezal and say it's kind of
yeah.
in your head. I think.
Oh yeah,
I
no,
don't
no, no.
think
I,
it's-
yeah, and I totally admit it might be in my head because I noticed that you were having difficulty. Like you would be like, oh, but what about this? And then it would just like keep on going. But
Well, she's a very kind of strong opinioned individual. It's like when she wants to say something, she says it.
also I checked my phone. Apparently, like you were saying in Telegram that the bass on my voice is bad. I don't know what's up with that. Like I can't like I'm not gonna check a record. Actually, you know what? Maybe I could listen to the stream.
Sounds okay now. It was
Yeah?
like when she was talking, I think her volume sounded louder than both of ours, and mine sounded louder than yours.
Okay.
And so now it's just you and me. It sounds okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, right? Because I don't know what's going out on the stream. I just know what's coming in my headphones.
Yeah, and all I'm looking at is like, a green bar, a yellow bar, and a red bar, and I'm trying to keep the peaks in our voice like just at the top of the yellow bar. That's all I see.
So it'll probably be fine on the stream.
hmm But
I'm
so
sure.
I've only got
yeah.
like another like 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
That went so much longer than I thought it was gonna go. I like you said like 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
Yeah,
So like
that's what
I
you
made
told us.
plans for tonight. That was
Yeah.
very awesome of her to stay on.
Yeah, you could tell it like for the last half hour, she had a lot going on. In the
Yeah,
background.
yeah, definitely.
Yes, it's very
Definitely.
nice of her to keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so funny too because I prepped for elections and cancel culture, and it
Yeah.
just like quit. And every time I was like thinking about coming back in, but like we were talking about just like totally different things, and I was thinking about like, well, to pull things back to cancel culture, but like we were so far away from cancel culture and like the
Yeah.
elections that like
Well, actually, when she first talked to us, she was like, "I don't really want to talk about race too much." 'Cause
Yeah.
it's kind of.
and she didn't
It's
want to
kinda
talk about
played out.
herself either. Yeah, so
And she talked a lot about
Yeah,
herself.
yeah,
and she
yeah,
talked
yeah.
a lot about race.
yeah.
And I don't know, maybe she felt comfortable with us. Maybe I don't know. But yeah, I'm glad we kind of got those questions. I like them a lot more than talking about cancel culture so much and the election.
Oh, I don't know. I thought those were good topics, but I was actually surprised that she supported Kamala. I did not see that coming.
Oh, really? Why not?
Because a lot of, I mean, I would put like Rachel Dolezal like in the progressive realm. A lot of progressives do not like Kamala.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
that's
like
true.
Kamala's kind of old news at this point, but I remember there was, I mean, she was a prosecutor, right? And she was
Oh, yeah.
responsible for like putting a lot of people in prison and like being
Yeah.
kind of a, hard-headed prosecutor.
Specifically, black people too. I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess we should wrap it up then. Is there anything you got in the grab bag you want to talk about quick?
I mean, I had tons of stuff, but I mean, so one just we should just mention, just like throw it into the wind, is that so there was the bond hearing for Ahmaud Arbery, the Ahmaud Arbery case with the Travis McMichael,
really?
Travis McMichael, Gregory McMichael, and William Roddy Bryan. And Roddy actually, it wrapped up. He did not get bond. That was kind of like the big thing, is that like his lawyer wanted him like released from prison until the trial, but he did not get that, and he's now being investigated for sex crimes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that's probably the reason he didn't get it.
Holy shit. And when is that going to trial? Do you know?
No, because of COVID, they haven't set a date yet. I don't believe. Yeah.
Seems like a lifetime ago we talked about that story.
It's just so weird. Like it seemed so unrelated, and then like it turns out that William Roddy Bryant used to molest Ahmaud Arbery like in a daycare. Like No, I'm joking. I just wanted to see the look on your face. I just wanted to see the look on your face.
Oh my God. Oh
I
my
just wanted to see the look on your face.
God.
but I wasn't lying about the sex crimes thing. That part was true.
That's a dark joke if I've ever heard one.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of like I'm kind of scared that like Rachel's gonna listen to this part and be like, man, he's making jokes in bad taste again.
Well, I mean, that's kind of our wheelhouse.
Yeah,
So
it really
she,
is. Yeah.
fair- she knew what she was getting into here before, and I think.
But we can also
you
do
know,
we can also do dad jokes. It really is our wheelhouse.
we do dad jokes. I'm gonna stay away from the dad jokes. The last couple I've told have been not racially sensitive, so I'm just gonna leave them out of this podcast.
What? Which I don't know what you're referring to.
Good.
Give me a hint. Give me a hint. No hints.
I'll
Okay.
say later. Yeah, I don't know. I think it went pretty well. There's nothing like too interesting in the news right now that I wanted to cover. COVID in Canada seems to be under control. COVID in the Dominican is like blowing up.
Yeah, same with
So
the
they
States
just-
right now, apparently.
Yeah, they just shut us down with another curfew. So we're every day at 8 o'clock we got to be in bed, which is nice because it used to be 5 o'clock. So that's very nice. I'm up until 8.
Yeah.
Um,
And do you think that's that's going to make an improvement, or?
I don't know about that, but I will say this for the Dominican Republic. Today I was walking my dogs, and in the park they were giving out free antibody tests to anybody who wanted to test. There's like a big bus there with a whole bunch of nurses. They're just testing everybody they could, which is kind of crazy because like they don't even have that in Canada right now.
Well,
Like,
we
how
don't. We
is-
still don't support the antibody test, right? Like, I'm assuming they're doing the antibody test.
Canada's starting to support the antibody test.
Okay.
So like I know the company that I work for is like almost there. We're getting closer. They've definitely got some antibody tests on the market, but no, like on the whole, Canada is against the antibody test. Like it's not an easy thing to get right now,
Yeah.
which is crazy. It just seems crazy to me that like a country with so little resources and so little know-how would be following like John Hopkins' advice over Canada.
Wait, sorry. Oh, so you're saying the Dominican? Wait, who's following John Hopkins over Canada?
So like Dominican Republic is following John Hopkins.
Yeah. But I mean, Canada is kind of somewhat of an outlier, right? Like the antibody tests are in Germany, like U.S., many different countries, correct? Many different developed countries.
Yeah. Canada, I guess, is trying to like lead the pack, but they're leading from
What do you
behind.
mean lead the pack? Like they're not doing the antibody. Like they're trying to lead the pack by not doing the antibody test. You're saying?
Well, yeah, I mean, Canada's view is like they know what's best and kind of not listening to, which is so weird because you would think that Justin Trudeau would follow the science, right?
Oh, is he not following the science? What is the science? Give us
Well,
us the
the-
411.
Well, the science. Oh, okay. So if you go to John Hopkins and you listen to, they're like the leading medical voice on this, and the idea is test as many people as often as you can. Spend your money on testing,
Yeah.
so you know where the virus is, how many people have it, where you need to focus your control of the people, and what you need to do. And Canada is still kind of like, well, we're gonna wait and see. Like, we don't want to have a whole bunch of false positives. We're worried about the kind of quality of the tests we can get. And there's a lot of there's a lot of research that's come out from different Canadian boards of health. I can't talk about this too much without getting in trouble, but I'll just say like different provinces have invested money in doing research on antibody tests, and there's a lot of them on the market right now that work according to those health boards in different provinces. And so like the provinces are telling the nation to get their shit together basically, and the national level government is waiting. So they're kind of like dragging their feet on this.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I've got tests in my house. I test everybody that comes in and out of here. It just boggles my mind that Canada doesn't want to test.
Well, you had speculated that it had something to do with a lobbying group that was associated with maybe one company producing the test or another, and they were trying to get a monopoly on the test.
I think so. So I've heard from some nameless clients of mine that basically they've seen this kind of thing before, where the government of Canada kind of lets all their friends get in there first and make a bunch of money. then they'll let everybody else in. But I don't want to say anything that'll get me in trouble. I don't want to speculate. But it does seem strange where like other
Just gotta
Western
throw in the word
countries,
alleged every time.
alleged, very
Allegedly.
alleged,
Yeah.
allegedly. Yeah, I mean it's kind of crazy. Like if you look at any other European country, they're doing a ton of testing. If you look at Australia, New Zealand, you know, go down the list. Everyone's doing all basically all the tests they can get. Even Handsome Truth was talking about this in the United States. He said something like they're checking your anus for COVID, and it's true. There is a fecal test for COVID that's out on the market right now, being tested.
And that goes that tests your fecal matter, not
Yeah, it's they
okay.
don't they don't take the test from your anus. They take it from your fecal matter. But yeah, like he's essentially right. Like they are testing your poop tests for COVID. Yeah. So I mean, there's where we're on the COVID front. Uh, I guess Rachel Dolezal talked about the elections, and you didn't get to answer. Who do you think will win right now?
So because I thought we were talking about the election, I thought that was going to be a primary focus of the thing. I scratched multiple different surface. I scratched through a surface and then through deeper surface. So there is the talk of the shy Trump voter, which is a term I hate, but like it's a term that people accept. The concept I like and appreciate is that there are people who are going to vote for Trump that will not admit that they are going to vote for Trump when they're on the phone with a pollster, anything like that. They don't want people to know. They're embarrassed about it, whatever reason. So there's that factor, which is almost certainly affecting the polls in some way, shape, or form. Then there's the other factor, which a lot of people on the right are talking about, which is the oversampling of Democrats on the polls. So
Could you flesh that out a bit? Why are Democrats oversampled?
Yeah, well, apparently, so I was reading a CNN article actually just before we started, and this has been refuted. It's actually no more. This is kind of bad actually, but it's no more oversampled than like the 2016 elections were. And if you actually wait, if you weight it so that it's like, okay, we're going to adjust. Like, let's say there was 500 Democrats polled in this particular poll, and there was 300 Republicans. Okay, well, we're gonna weight the Democrat votes and the Democrat poll results and the Republican poll results so they actually reflect the demographic breakdown of the country. It's still Biden in a serious lead if you do that. So yeah, there is a marginal effect, perhaps more than marginal, but it's still a huge lead for Biden.
Yeah.
Then factoring the shy, I hate that term, but the shy Trump voter, I still think that Biden's probably in the lead. When you go to by the way, Real Clear Politics is a great resource for this. They've got a map of the entire country, state by state. They've got the states that are, Biden's going to win. They've got the states that Trump's going to win, dark red, dark blue. And then they've got the leaning Trump, leading Biden. Then they've got the toss-ups. And so you can go around yourself and look at like, well, what is Trump's odds of winning? What are the polls in this toss-up state? What are the polls in Texas, which is a very important toss-up state right now with a lot of electoral seats on the line. And it does seem to me that when you're looking at the polls in these toss-up states, they're not, I guess, they're within the margin of error, but they're kind of within the margin of error on Biden's side. So
Yeah.
save for, there's so much stuff that can happen. Like there's a lot of time still, but if the election were held today, I would bet on Biden.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same. I just haven't done as much research as you. I just feel like wind is blowing his way. I feel like the hate for Trump is so palatable. It's in the air. And I don't think Trump has the same support that he had in 2016.
No,
I think,
how could he? Yeah.
Yeah, well, how could he? Like, where is the wall? He's built no wall. I did read something that he had cut down immigration by something like 40% the other day.
Maybe illegal immigration.
I think it was legal immigration.
Due to COVID. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it might be because of COVID. It was just something briefly I saw on I think it was Red Elephants. So it wasn't a liberal site. It was, they were calling it a white pill. They were saying it was good. I've kind of, I haven't been really into the news media for the last couple of weeks. We said on the show earlier, I had a kind of a family emergency, so I've been kind of like out of that, just focusing on home stuff. But my feeling right now is Joe Biden is going to sweep pretty strongly. Like, I don't think he's going to have a weak win. I think he's going to win by a lot.
I think there's so much stuff that's going to happen still.
Yeah.
The debates are going to, I think, more so than ever before, be really important. Like Biden's historic gaffes. Like if he bursts a blood vessel in his eye and like starts talking about like poo for a second, like it's over, you know?
I mean, yeah. So like, I think Trump will do really well in the debates, and I think Biden will do pretty badly because I don't know. I sent you this thing he had with Barack Obama recently, where they made Joe
Yeah.
Biden look really good.
I
and
actually
lucid.
haven't watched that yet, but you were telling me about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's like a 15-20 minute video that just came out. It's circling Facebook, and I'm assuming every other social media platform. Joe Biden, Barack Obama sitting down talking politics, and I didn't really focus on the content, but it made Joe Biden look so smart and lucid and with it, and he hasn't. In his presidential run, he has not looked that way. He's been having his corn pop gaff and his play the record player gaff. He sounds like a kooky old man. But they edited this so well. It's really well edited. And Barack Obama, obviously a very well-spoken individual, asking good questions, getting good answers. It makes Joe Biden seem super reasonable, I think, to the average person.
Also, he has a huge sword to wield. Like he's the guy who's pulling out the sword and the stone when it comes to race, right? Like race is like a huge issue right now. Funny enough, we're having Rachel Dolezal on. Dolezal. But with the George Floyd stuff, with the Black Lives Matter protests / riots, like this is going to be. I can see them devoting entire 20-minute segments in the debates about this, and Trump is just basically going to get slaughtered if I'm reading the winds correctly. If I'm like licking my fingers and the way I see the winds going, like I don't see Trump having a leg to stand on.
What's he gonna say? He's gonna say things like black unemployment down.
No. But that's the thing is COVID's totally fucked him for all that. He can say like, well, before all that, I was doing really good with the Hispanics and my blacks. We love our blacks, like.
And COVID's kind of put everyone out of business.
Yeah, exactly.
Out of jobs and
exactly.
Everyone, so everyone's doing
So
bad.
that talking point does not exist anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I guess then like he can't really fall back on the economy either because
the
economy's not doing well.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so then like he's gonna go to his base and he's gonna be like, build the wall again, yay! Like haven't. He's done nothing on the wall. If you got like, do you have 5 minutes to get into this?
Yeah, I got like another like 5 or 7 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was gonna say like, I don't really see a big difference between Trump and Biden. Like, if you're a conservative,
I'm so not interested in this election at all. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, so you like Biden, and it's like, what's he gonna do differently than Trump? He was with Obama. They had similar kind of like deportation numbers for illegals. Joe Biden's pretty like Obama's pretty conservative compared to like politicians now, and it's safe to assume that Biden would be similar to Obama because he was in that same political camp, right?
Yeah.
It just seems like on most of the issues he's basically the same as Trump. If anything, Trump seems more socially liberal than Joe Biden.
I think but like to say it's only rhetorical, I think rhetoric is actually really important, actually. And rhetorically they're very different. Like Trump Trump is like defending like statues, and Joe Biden is not so much in that camp. And I think like the symbolism is very important. Like I said, I think we are talking in maybe our first episode. I was talking about the symbolism of the wall and how that could be said to be very very important. Like you could say like, oh well, the wall is not really gonna do anything. It's not gonna like know people like most of the people who stay most of the illegal immigrants are overstayed visas and everything, and they fly here like but I think the symbolism could be said to be important. And so I think the rhetoric is actually important.
Well, Joe Biden's rhetoric is going to be, "I've been working for black people my whole life. I've been
Yeah.
a champion of
Well,
black
his
people
his
forever."
his breakout video, like the video that kicked off his campaign, was a denunciation of Charlottesville,
Yeah.
the Unite the Right rally, which had
Yeah.
various
People walking around with a Confederate flag and stuff. Yeah.
ne'er-do-wells. They had various ne'er-do-wells of the white persuasion, and
Some sort of basket of deplorables.
yeah. What's really thrown into stark contrast with me about that is that with Charlottesville, we've got this protest. People with various ideologies at this protest. Someone dies. Someone is killed. Someone is killed.
person.
One person.
One person.
And now, so we've got these Black Lives Matter protests. We've got multiple deaths.
Like a lot of them.
Yeah,
Like,
and like injuries are through the roof. And these are peaceful protests. So we've got one death, and other than that, like you could say, like as far as you could say, to the degree that Black Lives Matter protests are largely peaceful, you could say, well, Charlottesville was a largely peaceful protest.
and it's one protest.
Yeah, but it is like the epitome of evil. Like it just like even me defending it, like to some degree right now, is like I feel like just claws like coming out at me, like you cannot do this. But meanwhile, like it's totally cool to say like, oh yeah, well 15 people got shot, and like some of the videos actually
They
from the
pulled a
Black Lives
burning
Matter,
body from a building the other
yeah,
day.
and like some of the
burnt body.
unconscious people getting kicked in the head and everything, like it's disgusting. But like
Or
it's
like-
like you look at all that and you can say, well, it's a mostly peaceful protest.
How could you ever
How
say
could you
it's
disparage? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
like
just the contrast of that is very interesting, and I think a sign of the times.
You got that black guy who's just been arrested for like putting his knee on a baby's neck, on a 2-year-old's neck.
Oh man, that image! Like I honestly I don't think I've actually even looked directly at that image. I think I blurred my
Send me the
eyes.
headline,
I
I was
think
like,
yeah. I
okay.
think I blurred my eyes.
look
I
at
think I
this.
was looking at like the side of the screen. I never looked at it directly. So disturbing. So there was I didn't even read the story. There was just a photo op where I think it was a black couple, and there was a white baby, and they were taking pictures kneeling on the baby's neck. That's what the story is.
Yeah. I guess before we go, gonna give a big shout out to Andre Nicotina. He's just
Yeah.
saying the enthusiasm for Trump is almost non-existent compared to 2016. Doesn't look good for him.
Well,
think we-
no, I actually kind of disagree with that. Like, so Trump has way more enthusiasm than Biden does. Most of the Biden voters are voting against Trump. That's what Rachel Dolezal was basically saying in her speech today. Most of the Biden voters are voting against Trump. A lot of the Trump voters are voting for Trump. He does have a lot of passion behind him. It's not like what it was in 2016, but it's stronger. It's like, as far as the passion of a certain subset of voter base, Trump's got that over Biden. That's so like, if it let's say there was like 12 feet of snow in every state on the day that they were voting. I'm gonna give that to Trump.
Yeah. I get it, but like she said, like, are they gonna get votes by mail because of COVID? They might get it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's gonna be different state by state. I think some states, or at least some areas, already do get their voting by mail. Like, it's like they get a ballot in the mail.
I mean, we'll probably look into this as we get close to the election. I'm sure
Yeah.
we'll cover the election eventually.
Like while I remember, I wanted to give a big shout out to Ireland. They are downloading our podcast for some reason in Ireland. I also want to give a shout out to Lithuania. They're watching our YouTube channel. Lithuania is the third most, like, so we've got United States, Canada, Lithuania. Big shout out to Lithuania. Yeah.
Well, aren't you part Lithuanian?
No, I'm part Latvian. Get it right.
I'm so racist. Like, how
Yeah,
confused those two
yeah.
proud
We all look the same, right?
Yeah, Lithuanians and Latvians. Yeah, what was I thinking? You know what? It's all about education, Jason, and this is a teachable moment for me.
Yeah. Well, you need to shut your mouth in the future. Just let me speak.
You know what? Is that my Indian fragility showing? I think that might be my Indian fragility showing. Yeah, I guess that's it. Like big thank you to Rachel Dolezal for coming on.
Yeah, for real. I mean, that was awesome. I never saw it coming, and I never thought that she would stay for an hour and a half. That was crazy.
Yeah. Thanks to you, Jason. Great job. Hopefully we'll work out some of the more technical issues by next week.
Man, oh, yeah, I don't need I don't need to bore the audience with this stuff, but like it's like
Yeah.
holy shit. Yeah. I'm not gonna bore the audience with that.
Yeah. But yeah. And next week I think are we doing Fat Chicks?
That one is certainly like on the docket. That's definitely an episode that we could do.
Yeah.
I actually, yeah, for the audience, I wrote an article on women of the larger persuasion years ago, and it actually picked up a lot of steam. The co-founder of Twitter posted it as recommended reading to his following. It was used in a lecture at Arizona State University. So we've got that like on the back burner somewhere. Maybe next week if we can't think of anything better. But we'll definitely we'll definitely lose some subscribers over it. But yeah.
Over Fat Chicks? You think so? No.
It's definitely possible. It's definitely possible.
No.
If we had a lot of subscribers, definitely. But because we only have like 55 or something, yeah, maybe not.
All right, Jay. Love you, buddy. See you next week.
Peace.